The story begins with the protagonist, Yoonja, completely bruised and gasping for breath. He looks at his hand and notices something shining. It's some kind of orb that strongly resembles a Bakugan. Clenching his fist tightly, he questions whether everything he went through was because of this object. Frustrated, he starts cursing the object, which is called the Grail. In a brief explanation, it said that this Grail grants any wish to its owner. In silence, the hero seems to be thinking about his wish. Suddenly, he starts speaking about what he wants, although we don't know exactly what it is. After stating his wish, a bright light appears, and thus the initial story is introduced. Following this prologue, we see Yoonja asking his boss to leave work early. The man says that it's not like the boy to do this, but he insists, saying he just wants to go home early. Eventually, the older man allows the kid to leave. The worker simply thanks him, saying they'll see each other tomorrow. This sparks gossip among the others, with people saying he seems to be doing better lately, and that he used to look like he was on his last legs. Furious, the boss slams the table to get everyone's attention. He's irritated by the widespread gossip, and at that moment one of the employees asks if there won't be dinner tonight. The boss promptly replies that there won't be, and the employee questions why Yoonja gets special treatment. Meanwhile, the hero goes to a store to buy flowers for his wife's birthday. He also buys 150 of beef for soup, a traditional birthday dish in South Korea. After shopping, the hero finally arrives home. He announces his arrival but gets no response. Not one to waste time, he heads straight to the kitchen. With great care, he prepares the entire dinner. Sadly, he begins to eat while looking at a photo of his wife and daughter, apologizing to his wife for not being with her. After the sad and strange meal, the protagonist goes straight to take a bath. Then, after the bath, he heads toward a diary. On the page, he writes to his wife as if it were an open letter. Yoonja writes that he promised he would come home early and prepare a good dinner. While looking again at that photo, he asks if the soup was any good. Getting no response once more, the protagonist just bites his lip as if holding back tears. He begins to say that he followed a recipe, but it tasted bland. While in the background, the T reports a serial killer who has claimed 12 victims. Regardless, the hero continues, saying he bought some flowers and a teddy bear for his daughter, Mina. With a trembling hand, he asks how their daughter is and if she liked the gift. Again, the protagonist receives no answer and falls silent. Lost in his thoughts, he admits that he's waiting for a reply in any form, that he also hopes to hear her voice again, and of course, to see her face once more. At this moment, Yoonja recalls a scene from when his wife left forever. Remembering all of it, he begins to cry. As tears fall, all he can think about is how much he misses his wife. Having a panic attack, he starts writing that he misses her over and over across many pages of the notebook. This scene of him writing like a madman strongly resembles Kyra from Death Note, writing non-stop. After some time, we see that the notebook is filled. Still with tears on his face, he looks at the notebook and simply says it's pathetic. However, his expression changes when he notices something different. Frightened, he wonders what it is. His notebook began to shine brightly in front of him. Without thinking twice, the protagonist grabs the notebook and starts flipping through it. He searches for something like a man possessed. Suddenly, a page catches his eye. Faced with the text, he freezes. The text says that the man can see them again. In the notebook, it is clear that the message is referring to the protagonist's wife and daughter. Seeing this message that seems to have come from beyond, Yoon-I is left confused and scared. Sometime later, he asks to leave work early again, and this time, his boss brings up his wife's birthday from a few days prior. Yoon-I promises it won't happen again, but his boss, acknowledging his consistently solid work, allows him to go. This action causes some complaints among the other employees, but the boss quickly silences them. Back at home, Yoon-I stares at his notebook and realizes that 6 months of diary entries have vanished. In their place, new entries are being written before his very eyes. This unnerving event makes him consider throwing the notebook away, but he finds himself unable to do so. The first new entry is dated September 14th, and the second, from the 15th, describes a traffic accident that resulted in 2 deaths and 8 injuries. While reading, he realizes with a shock that the events transpired exactly as described in the diary. In disbelief, Yoon-I slams the table as he looks at the notebook page that promises he can see his family again. Nervously, he considers the possibility that all of this might actually be true. According to the diary, he would be able to see his family again that day at 10 p.m. in a parallel universe. A glance at the clock shows only a few minutes remain before he is supposed to enter this new world. The ticking of the clock heightens his anxiety as the moment approaches. With less than 2 minutes to go, his fear is so intense that he can only swallow hard in anticipation. Finally, the time arrives. At exactly 1000 p.m., Yoon-I feels a strange sensation. Everything around him begins to dissolve as if made of pixels on a screen. Suddenly, he opens his eyes, terrified. He is confused to find that he is no longer at home. Looking around, he hears people asking where they are, with some guessing it might be a stadium. However, they all quickly realize they are in a forest. With a notebook in his hand, Yun finally accepts that everything written in it was true. At the exact specified time, he was transported to a parallel universe. At that moment, an announcement declares that the tutorial is about to begin. Yun remembers this detail was also mentioned in the diary. A system like voice informs everyone that they must imagine a weapon, and it will be generated for them. Without hesitation, Yun imagines a sword, and it appears in his hands. The ideal choice would be to generate a modern weapon, but for some reason, whenever someone tries that, it results in some kind of bow and arrow. The system quickly announces that zombies are coming, and that the people must fight them. Upon seeing the zombies, everyone realizes this is no joke. Because of that, everyone freezes, not knowing what to do. Walking calmly, Yoonja thinks to himself that he doesn't know whether the diary records the future, nor does he understand anything about this world. However, he understands that at this moment, he belongs to neither world. At that point, Yoonja begins to prepare for combat. As he strikes one of the zombies, he realizes that fighting them is easier than he expected, though still terrifying. With a perplexed look, he keeps watching the zombie move. With a final blow, he understands that a zombie will only stop moving if the balloon attached to its neck is destroyed. Instantly, the system informs him that he has earned one achievement point. The system also congratulates him for defeating the first zombie and notifies him that his achievements are recognized and that his stats have increased by 2 points. At that moment, a kind of energy starts to rise within Yoonja's body. Then, he charges into the horde of zombies, now moving much faster. Quickly, he takes out one zombie in a single hit. He manages to solo several of them at once, earning even more achievement points. Meanwhile, the other people are struggling and crying out for help. However, Yoonja thinks that he can't worry about others right now. After defeating another zombie, he notes that there are no more left in his immediate area. Sometime later, the system announces that he has defeated 58 zombies, earning 100 achievement points and 2 free attribute points. Relieved, Yoonja notices that he feels less tired, and wonders if this is due to his increased stats. Suddenly, he senses information entering his mind. At that moment, a screen showing his stats is like him. He sees that he has 14 magic points, which isn't bad at all. Yoonja remembers that the diary mentioned magic is the most important attribute, but that right now he needs strength and agility. The system announces that 198 people survived, initiating the second tutorial, and that this time only the top 100 will remain alive and earn points. It clearly states that everyone who doesn't make it into the top 100 will die, leaving the people in despair. Seeing everyone's panic, Yoonja concludes that only he received a diary with information about this world. The system explains that there are 2 ways to earn points. The first is to enter the forest and fight creatures alone. The second method, which is simpler, consists of ending another player's life, which grants the killer half of the victim's achievement points. Upon hearing this, everyone becomes frightened and starts staring at each other while swallowing hard. Casually, Yoonja just picks up his diary to check if there's anything new. Meanwhile, everyone around him says they need to stay in the top 100 and not waste time fighting monsters. At that moment, everyone prepares to fight each other in a desperate frenzy. One of them questions whether the plan is for them all to just destroy each other. Yoonja speaks up, saying that all a person needs to do is defeat monsters and earn points, but he makes it clear that it won't be easy. One of the people points at Yoonja, saying that he's good at fighting monsters, and that's why he's saying this. In response, Yoonja says that killing people can't be that different, which shocks the man. Yoonja then asks if there will really be 100 people left if they all fight each other, and reminds them that the tutorial was supposed to be about fighting zombies together. He then questions everyone, saying that maybe in the next mission, they'll have to work as a team. Determined to help, he says that the more people there are, the easier it will be. At that moment, he turns to leave, and a girl asks where he's going. Upon hearing this, Yoonja simply stops and says he's going to survive. Sometime later, someone calls out to him, telling him to wait. It's the girl from earlier, already out of breath from running to catch up. Yoonja asks what she wants, and she introduces herself, saying her name is Yurajum. Awkwardly, she asks if she can go with him, but he immediately refuses. Desperate, the young woman says that 2 is better than 1 and promises to be useful. Our hero then asks if she's killed a zombie, making Jung realize that convincing him won't be so easy. Yoonja then says he knows she just wants someone to hide behind, which to him isn't wrong, so long as she finds someone else to do that with. As he walks away, Yoonja thinks he wasted time on that pointless conversation. He then remembers that 3 days before the tutorial, someone discovered a dungeon near a cliff. It had a very narrow entrance, much like the one that now stands before him. We learn that the monsters in that dungeon are much stronger than the zombies, and that if he had gone on the first day, he would have died, meaning it's a very dangerous place. As he crawls through the narrow passage, Yoonja can only think that he needs to get stronger at all costs. Once inside, he realizes the dungeon is much more spacious than the entrance suggested. Suddenly, a noise grabs his attention. It's caused by creatures that resemble insects. After defeating one, he realizes it was carnivorous. Its shell isn't very strong, and it gives 10 achievement points, unlike zombies, which only gave 1 point. We find out that after the tutorial, the rewards distributed depend on how many points a person has. Looking back, Yoonja thinks that what he left behind is more important, so he just needs to wait a little longer to see his family again. Some time passes, and he manages to earn several achievement points. Tired, he says he can feel his attributes increasing, and that he's also getting used to everything. But now it's time to face the Mossens. They're weaker, but since they move in groups, they're dangerous. We see a group of ants coming toward Yoonja. Observing the insects, he says it's disgusting. He quickly realizes the creatures are after the bread in his pocket, so he decides to throw it in another direction to distract the insects and make them easier to attack. With his sword, Yoon sends pieces of it flying in every direction until there are only 6 left. One more swing of the sword and only 5 remain. However, one of the creatures manages to attack him from behind, forcing Yoon to strain his legs just to stay standing. Maintaining his balance, he continues the slaughter until only 3 ants remain, trying to corner him. Using his agility, our hero jumps to dodge the attack and immediately strikes back with full force. Finally ending that disgusting battle, we learn that each ant is worth 5 achievement points, along with a skill called Strength and Flesh of the Moss Ants. But what Yoon didn't know was that acquiring a skill during the tutorial is as rare as pulling stars from the sky. Still, in his current state, he's very satisfied with what he's achieved. Reading the diary, the boy discovers that more people will arrive at that place the following day. The problem is that the page with more details about this situation is locked, leaving him a bit confused. Thinking to himself, he wonders if someone from the future is the one sending him those messages and what exactly the Holy Grail is, which keeps appearing in the pages. Meanwhile, elsewhere, we see Dude furious about being in second place. Sitting down and grabbing another player by the hair, he asks who this Yoon is, the one in first place. Suddenly, Ju reappears and says it's pretty obvious that he's the same guy who did well at the start of the tutorial by killing the first zombie. After thinking for a moment, Dude quickly remembers. Getting very close, the young woman says she knows where Yoon went, and that she'll tell him without hesitation if he lets her eliminate the player right next to them. Even knowing he'll lose important points, Dude says the player is all hers, as long as she gives him a little something in return. Ju agrees and immediately draws her sword, ending the life of the boy in front of her without a second thought. We return to the dungeon where Yoon continues killing ants non-stop. After some time, he finally manages to increase his endurance. Thinking aloud, the protagonist says he's earned enough for someone who started the tutorial just 2 days ago, and that while these things may be monsters, they're still ants, which means something much worse is waiting for him. A message pops up saying he has discovered the Moss and Queen, the boss of that dungeon. But as he gets closer, Yoon realizes the creature is much larger than he expected. Hiding behind one of the stone walls, he wonders what he should do since he knows nothing about the Ant Queen and there are still many Moss Ants alive. He concludes that he can't risk losing the kill to the people who will arrive tomorrow. Looking at his stats, the boy realizes he's twice as strong as a normal person, which means he might stand a chance. Suddenly, a notice appears saying that rewards will now be distributed based on ranking. Since the protagonist is in first place, he ends up receiving several items, including points to increase his attributes. Smiling, he says he earned 8 points in total, and now he has enough bread to use as bait. He throws several pieces toward the ants, which quickly get distracted and don't even notice the incoming attack. A few minutes later, we see that Yoon has managed to defeat several Moss Ants. Looking back, he realizes that the queen is using pawns instead of facing him directly. But more ants appear behind him, snapping him out of his thoughts. Even after defeating so many creatures, the boy sees that this is far from over. Determined, he decides that whether there are 100 or 1,000, he'll come out victorious. As he resumes the attack, the achievement point notifications won't stop appearing on his screen. Breathing heavily from exhaustion, the protagonist lets out a small chuckle, pleased with his performance. An ant approaches, and bites his leg but is immediately annihilated. The boy then says that if it weren't for the rank skill he earned, he'd be in big trouble, which means the skill he'll get from killing the queen will be extremely powerful. After resting a bit, he charges at the creatures again, leaving only body parts scattered on the ground. Looking ahead, Yoon realizes only the boss remains. Letting out a shriek, the queen shows she's not willing to lose. Apologizing while twirling the sword in his fingers, the protagonist says he has to do this, charging at the ant queen with full force and plunging his blade into her head, causing green slime to splatter in every direction. Meanwhile, Dude and Ju comment that someone was already there before them. Thinking it over, the man says that humans give more achievement points than monsters, so coming here was a big waste of time, except for the chance to catch Yoon who has more achievement points than he does. Reflecting, he says that if the boy has been hunting here for days, he must be exhausted, making the task much easier. Yun-ba finally manages to defeat the Ant Queen, receiving as a reward an increase in all his attributes and a skill called Solidify, which when activated wraps his leg in a durable membrane. Satisfied, he says that depending on the situation, it could even save his life since its strength increases based on his magic, proving on its own that clearing a dungeon is worth it. However, looking ahead, the protagonist says there's more to come since there are three main factors in terms of strength in that world: attributes, skills, and items. We discover that attributes are the foundation that allows people to gain superhuman status. Skills are the magic abilities that help maintain and enhance that superhuman status. And items can increase attributes when equipped, and sometimes even grant new skills, which means a normal human can gain supernatural strength from just one item, making them the most important factor of all. After walking for a bit, Yun-da finally finds the treasure chest. But suddenly, something catches his attention, making his eyes widen and causing him to burst into laughter. From the surprising sight, we cut back to the group of villains who have just found the corpses of the ants the protagonist left behind. Looking ahead, Do-hun tells the others to wait. After a few steps, he discovers that the boy also defeated the boss. Then he comes face to face with Yunja, who appears from the opposite direction. Thinking to himself, our hero says it's way too early for those people to have found the dungeon. But when he sees Jung with them, he quickly concludes that she's the one responsible, which means he can't rely on the diary alone as his guide. Also thinking, Do-hun wonders how the boy managed to do all that alone without seeming completely exhausted. Grabbing his sword, he states that if the protagonist's attributes increased due to his hunt, then he's far more dangerous now than before. After approaching a little closer, Yunja tells the man to get out of his way, which apparently doesn't sit well with him. Swallowing his anger, Do-hun decides to move aside. Our hero then simply walks past and turns his back to the group. Annoyed, Jung asks why the man let the boy walk away. He replies that he doesn't know what the boy found in the dungeon, but he's definitely not some random weak fool. With a hand to his head, the blonde man concludes that he should have focused on increasing his attributes by killing monsters because that would put him ahead of Yunja. Elsewhere, we see a player attacking another, saying he doesn't want to die, and we discover that chaos has broken out. A mysterious voice appears, and says that stage 2 of the tutorial is now complete. Those who failed will now be eliminated as only the top 100 will move on to the next phase. The victors begin to disappear while the losers realize they're about to be devoured by monsters. We return to Yunja, who starts to wake up. Confused, he wonders where he is and who all those people around him are. Relieved, our hero says that at least Do-hun's group isn't there. Suddenly, the voice announces that stage 3 of the tutorial is about to begin, and that it will be based on 3 doors. Through the red door, 10 people can pass. Through the blue door, 5 can pass. And through the white door, only 1. The tutorial will only resume once everyone has gone through one of the doors. We learn that even though the red door allows more people to enter, it is the most difficult. The blue door is easier, while the white door allows the player to skip the fighting and proceed directly through the tutorial. Upon hearing this, a guy starts running desperately toward the white door, but when he tries to open it, he finds it's locked. The mysterious voice then announces that door selection will depend on achievement points, starting with the person who has the most, which in this case is Yunja. Everyone turns to look at the protagonist while yelling that it's obvious which door he'll choose. But to everyone's surprise, our hero chooses the red door. With mouths open, the players wonder if the guy really thinks all 10 of them can survive, and they begin to consider picking the same door. The voice then says that the next to choose is Park Jin-hyuk, who without hesitation says he wants the white door. A yelling boy asks if he didn't understand why Yunja chose the red door and calls him selfish. The annoyed guy says there's no guarantee everyone would pick the red door even if he did, and the white door guarantees his survival. Raising his hand, another young man says that in that case, he'll choose the blue door, causing other players to choose the same. Park then says Yunja's decision was pretty dumb and that he should have picked the white door. Our hero replies that he knows Park would choose whatever door he thought was right, so he should stop barking in a pathetic attempt to cover his own stupidity, adding that he would have been better off picking the blue door anyway. Suddenly, the mysterious voice announces that whoever's left must go through the red door, and everyone has 10 minutes to do so. Thinking aloud, one guy says he's going to die if he goes through the red door, which means he has to go through the white door at any cost. He starts running toward the passage, leaving Park furious. But when he tries to enter, he crashes into some kind of barrier. As he gets closer, the other guy kicks him, saying the boy scared him badly, and for that, he's going to die. But suddenly, someone grabs his arm. It's Yunja, who orders Park to leave the boy alone as he'll be part of his team. Thinking to himself, the boy with the earring realizes the protagonist's strength is supernatural. Releasing his opponent, our hero says that time is running out. Park decides to obey and before passing through the door, he wishes them good luck. Turning to the one still there, the protagonist says it's time to go, then asks if the boy on the ground isn't going to get up. He simply replies that he won't go in. Yunja turns and says that, in that case, it doesn't matter, leaving the player completely alone with his hands on his head as he cries. The boy wonders why he has to die like this. Suddenly, flames engulf his body, showing that his fate will be quite painful. On the other side of the door, our hero realizes he has arrived in a village which is strangely empty. Suddenly, someone catches his attention. It's a boy and a girl. Thinking, the protagonist concludes there are 3 people there, and then asks for their names. The girl says her name is Yuna, and the boy introduces himself as Jung Yu. Noticing that the boy's shirt is stained with what looks like blood, the protagonist becomes furious and says he got there by killing other people. Desperate, Jung Yu says it's not what the boy is thinking, but our hero says it doesn't matter anyway. After all, a useless coward is still better than an idiot. The mysterious voice appears again and says it will now explain how the 3rd stage works for those who passed through the red door. Together with the trio, we find out that this phase will last 10 days, and twice a day meaning 20 times total. Monsters will appear in the village at random times. If a stone in the center of the place is broken, it means they've lost. There must be at least one survivor in the village. Otherwise, the player will be teleported directly back there since outside the village is perfectly safe, so it won't be allowed for everyone to just hide. Thinking, Yunja concludes that sooner or later, someone will run away. Yun then says that for now, it's best they go to the stone, even though he knows getting through this stage won't be easy at all. After a while, he asks if the duo intends to stay and fight or run away. Yun asks if he really thinks they can win with only 3 people. The protagonist explains that the information about needing 10 people was likely false. He reasons that if there were 10 people, at least one would be tasked with staying in the village while the outside was unsafe. In that scenario, one person would inevitably run, causing others to do the same. This means the tutorial must be completable with a small, determined group. He then apologizes for thinking they were cowards. Jung-do adds that even if they ran, nothing would change, as the 2 who stayed would die, and the deserter would be teleported back to fight alone. Yun agrees and says that in that case, they need to fight together, since 3 is better than 2. Internally, our hero wonders if this would still happen if more people were there. He concludes that there's no way to know, especially because in the diary, he had chosen the blue door. After some walking, the trio arrives at the large stone. Yun says that even if it's just the 3 of them, he firmly believes it won't be impossible to pass the tutorial. This world is different and allows attributes to increase with every monster defeated, which will make them stronger. In his thoughts, Yun reveals that this is the very reason he chose the red door. Because after the 3rd stage, everyone will meet again in the same place, and those who went through the red door will be much stronger than the others. Annoyed, Yun asks if he thinks this is some kind of game, and if he's happy just because he gets to hunt more monsters. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake and crack, signaling the start of the first monster attack as creatures begin emerging from the fissures until a horde of demon goblins is formed. Yun tells the duo to make sure the stone is protected while he handles the creatures. Without hesitation, our hero decides to show what he's made of, sending goblin parts flying everywhere. Shocked, Jong-do asks how that's even possible. But a goblin appears in front of him, forcing him to fight, even though he doesn't want to. He and Yun then start pushing the monsters away from the stone. Seeing the 2 of them fighting, our hero fears they won't last. But suddenly, a goblin attacks him, showing that you should never get distracted in battle. After dealing with the creature, another one appears in midair, forcing him to activate his solidify ability since dodging won't be possible. The monster's sword hits the protagonist hard on the back but breaks as if made of paper, surprising him. Yun takes the opportunity to finish the job, realizing that the ability is extremely useful. This means the biggest problem is the pair with him, who seem much weaker. Running toward them, he shouts that he's coming. Sometime later, we see Yun and Jung-do leaning against the stone. Our hero then asks if either of them is hurt. Jung-do says he's fine, but he can't say the same about the girl. Yun then tells her to dress the wound, assuring her she'll be okay after some rest. Approaching, the boy in the pink shirt says he'll help with that. Internally, Yun states that if things get worse, he might have to fight alone, but announces out loud that it's time for a break. The sun sets quickly. Jung-do approaches and thanks the protagonist for his help earlier, which kept them alive. Yun asks if the boy is expecting something from him, but he denies it, saying he just felt he had to say thanks. The protagonist senses there's more and tells him to just spit it out already. Trembling, the boy says he didn't kill someone because he wanted to, but because he was attacked first. Our hero doesn't seem to care much, which makes the younger one desperate to the point of crying. Shouting, he asks how he can just ignore something like that. Yun decides to apologize, realizing he might have been too harsh, then asks why the boy is crying. But suddenly, he notices Yun has disappeared. After some searching, Jung, who returns and says he couldn't find the girl. Our hero concludes that she ran away because she was injured and afraid of dying. The boy in the pink shirt asks why she would do that. The protagonist says she probably thought they would win the tutorial regardless but isn't in the right state of mind to think rationally. With his head down, the boy asks what they'll do now. Yun-ah says the plan hasn't changed and that they'll keep hunting monsters, since worrying won't help anything. Jung-bu realizes the boy is right and decides to rest as well. He then says that running away isn't his style and asks what Yun-ah thinks will happen if the stone breaks. Our hero says they'll likely fail the tutorial, which means death. He tells Jung-bu he should at least be able to defeat 10 creatures. Jung-bu asks how he's supposed to do that. The protagonist then questions how the boy can't fight 10 while he himself fights dozens alone, and if that's the case, he should focus on protecting the stone. As night falls, another goblin horde appears. Shouting, the protagonist tells his Ellie to handle the creatures. He then thinks to himself that the boy is doing better than he expected. Activating his solidify ability, he launches monsters away, saying they're small fry while earning more achievement points. But when he looks back, our hero notices Jung-hu is surrounded. He decides to throw a rock at one of the goblins to help. Shouting, he tells the boy in the pink shirt to be careful. The protagonist thinks that at least he's gaining some advantage from the boy's increasing stats and realizes he's earning more points here than from fighting ants, which means choosing the red door definitely wasn't a mistake. After a few more hours, the duo finally finishes the first day, earning rewards, including food. Yun-ah praises Jung-bu for a job well done, while thinking that now only 9 days remain. And according to the diary, by the end of it all, he'll have gained 55 points in random attributes just for surviving, not to mention the bonus reward rate. Suddenly, the boy in the pink shirt says he gained a skill called Deal with the Devil, which increases his strength and agility by 5 while decreasing his endurance and energy by 2. Intrigued, the protagonist asks if he hadn't only killed 26 monsters. The boy says yes. Our hero then says he's jealous because he killed 98 and didn't get anything. Meanwhile, far away, we see Yuna enjoying some bread and thinking that running away was the right decision. After all, there was no way to fight monsters while injured. So now all she can do is pray that the two boys don't die. Thinking about Yunja, she concludes that if it depends on him, everything will turn out fine. We return to our boys who have just finished day 4. Lying on the ground, Jung-yu says he thought it would be just goblins and demons, but more and more creatures keep appearing, like moving trees, giant rats, and orcs, things he never imagined he'd see in his entire life. Seeing the cut on the young man's leg, the protagonist rips a piece of his own coat and approaches. He says the fabric isn't exactly clean, but it will help stop the bleeding. The boy thanks him and then asks if the protagonist thinks they'll survive, since they're still in the 3rd stage of the tutorial and have no idea what's coming next. Tying the cloth tightly, Yunja says of course we'll survive. Turning away, the boy says he can't die because he has siblings to take care of, and all he wants to know right now is if they're eating well and going to school, or crying in the rain, hungry, because there's no one there for them. Crying again, Jung-yu says he doesn't want to die and that he needs to return to his family. Hearing this makes Yunja think of his wife and daughter. Clenching his teeth, he says the boy won't die because he's going to protect him and then adds that there isn't much left now. Wiping his tears, the boy says that even if it sounds like bragging, hearing that helps a lot. Watching him, our hero just asks his Ellie to get some rest. We return to the past when Yunja was happy. Next to his wife, he films the cute things their baby is doing, then says the video is now his alone. His wife punches his shoulder, and the two start fighting with the phone. Suddenly, Mina starts crying and his wife says she must be hungry. Picking the baby up, our hero asks who made her so beautiful. Coming back with the bottle, the woman says it's obvious the little one takes after her, making his eyes sparkle. Suddenly, Jung-yu snaps him out of his thoughts, asking why he has that expression. We see the duo has made it to day 10. Standing up, our hero says, it's really boring just waiting for monsters. The boy in the pink shirt then asks if they were set free because it's the last day, but the protagonist says no. He wonders whether 2 waves might come at once. Jung-yu says it's clear now that Yuna won't be coming back. Our hero asks if he still thought that was possible, since it's obvious the girl ran away because she didn't want to fight. While they're talking, they don't notice the stone beginning to crack. Suddenly, a tremor occurs, making them wonder what the hell is going on. Shouting, Yunja tells him to step away from the stone, which starts breaking into several pieces as a bright light bursts out from the cracks. After a while, the rubble is gone, and a message appears saying the stone seal has been released. Jung-yu asks if that was really a portal, but our hero tells him to wait and watch. A massive shell appears out of nowhere, and they discover the boss monster has been released, the Lich, a bull made of bones with red eyes, and a jewel in the center of its forehead. The protagonist then tells the boy to stay focused no matter what. Frightened, Jung-yu asks what they should do. Our hero tells him to give him a moment. He'll take care of that monstrous thing while the boy handles the army of skeletons. Taking a few steps forward, Yunja faces the great demon, which charges at him with everything it's got. And without hesitation, our hero does the same. He ducks under the creature's legs to land his first strike. Watching the scene, Jung-do decides it's time to focus on his own task. And facing the skeleton army, he activates the skill he gained. We return to the protagonist, now on top of the lich, plunging his sword wherever he can, making the demon scream in pain. But looking ahead, he sees the creature heading toward a house with no intention of stopping. Then a huge crash occurs, but we see Yunja is still alive. On the ground, he says that was close. The creature roars again in fury, showing that it's still alive. Suddenly, something catches the protagonist's attention. It's the glowing slashes left by his sword on the monster. Shocked, our hero realizes that the creature has a regeneration ability, which means the battle is going to be tougher than he expected. Meanwhile, Yuna is still in hiding, wondering what's going on. Yunja keeps giving his all in the fight against the creatures. Just like Jung-do, who doesn't even hesitate to massacre the skeletons. But Yuna can only think about how strong the boys are, even though she thought the whole time they'd die easily. Biting her own nails, the girl wonders if the duo would forgive her for running away or if they'd try to kill her without a second thought. Either way, she needs to figure out what to do, and fast. Meanwhile, the protagonist tries to figure out if it's even possible to kill the creature right in front of him, and if it has any weaknesses, since all he knows so far is its regeneration skill. Suddenly, the monster decides to attack again, forcing the boy to stop thinking for a moment and dodge. Gripping his sword tightly, he says he knows the enemy can regenerate, but there's nothing he can do yet other than keep slashing and cutting. Using all his strength, our hero manages to slice a piece off the creature, but it quickly regenerates. Frustrated, he wonders if the monster is going to keep doing that forever. He braces himself again, since he has no choice but to keep fighting no matter what. The skeletal bull with red eyes roars as it sees him coming, lowering its head, hoping to strike with its massive horns. Without hesitation, Yunja decides to face the challenge, landing a solid blow to the monster's head with his sword, unsure if it were. He decides to observe for a few moments, but then someone yells for him to be careful. It's Jung-do, who appears out of nowhere, shielding himself from a massive explosion. The protagonist raises his arm to avoid being blinded. When he looks again, he's worried to see the state of his ally, who admits he's not doing too well. We find out that among the skeleton army, there's one that can use magic. Standing back up, our hero tells the other to stay where he is. But then something slams into him hard, sending him flying. With no chance to counterattack or grab onto anything, the bull, determined to finish him off, keeps charging, forcing Yun to use his solidify ability to reduce the impact. He continues flying through the air until he's brutally slammed against a wall. Luckily, he had gained the Vital Force ability on the 5th day, otherwise, he'd be a pancake. Grabbing onto the bull's head, the protagonist finds a glowing gem and concludes it must be a weak spot. To test his theory, he attacks immediately, causing the stone to come loose from the creature's forehead. Down below, Jung-do watches everything with his mouth wide open, surprised to see the skeletons around him suddenly collapse. A message appears stating that the lich demon has been killed, causing all the skeletons to stop moving. Reading that makes the brown-haired boy smile. Not seeing Yun, he starts running toward the bull, calling out for the protagonist non-stop, but with no response, he fears the worst might have happened. Suddenly, a voice asks if he's going to cry again. Coming out from a pile of bones, our hero says it's not time to be sad, he's still alive. Relieved, the boy runs to check if the protagonist is okay, stopping as soon as he gets close enough. With a tearful face, he asks if it's finally over. Smiling, Yun says he thinks so, looking at his friend, not quite understanding the expression on his face. Raising his arms, Jung-do lets out a yell in celebration of their victory. But suddenly, something strange happens. Yun, who showed up from who knows where, stabs Jung-do right in the abdomen with her sword, catching both him and the protagonist completely off guard. Screaming, Yun curses the girl, who apparently goes into shock after killing someone for the first time. In disbelief, our hero asks why she did it. Shaking more than a chihuahua, the young woman says he was going to kill her, claiming it was all in self-defense since both of them were assassins. And now she will live, not die in this horrible place. After all, no one knows when the game will truly end, which means if she kills them both, she'll earn achievement points. Caring about nothing else, Yun raises her weapon once more, celebrating the fact that the protagonist appears to be injured. But to her misfortune, Yun is stronger than she thinks, and with just one strike, he makes the girl's sword fall along with her arm. Confused, she glances sideways before she starts screaming in pain and desperation. With his tenacious life ability activated, our hero asks if she really thought she could kill him. Nervous, Yun asks how that's even possible. The boy replies that the move was nothing special, showing his opponent that the worst is yet to come. Without hesitation, Yun finishes what he started. He quickly goes to check on Jung-do, who is still alive. Trying to calm them down, our hero says he's not going to die. Smiling, his friend says it's admirable how he can bluff right to the end, but that he'd like to see his brothers one last time. Preparing to say something, the protagonist tells him to stop talking, because he already said this isn't his time. As he pours what looks like a potion, the boy's wound begins to heal rapidly. We find out it's a diluted elixir, collected after the protagonist defeated the Ant Queen. While not very potent, it can still have a strong effect. He was saving it for himself, but the situation was urgent. Confused, the brown-haired boy asks what that is but gets told again to shut up. Not minding, he asks why I didn't use it earlier, but the protagonist says that if he had, he'd be dead now. After sitting up, the boy is shocked to see that he no longer has any wounds. Thinking to himself, the protagonist admits it would be a lie to say he didn't feel like it was a waste. But after remembering all the moments they shared, he concludes it's better to just hope he never has to go through something like that again. Suddenly, Jong-gu hugs him, pulling him out of his thoughts. Sometime later, seeing the protagonist walking strangely, the boy asks if he's okay, then says he knows the feeling of killing someone. Yun-ai asks if he felt bad, too. The boy says yes and that he couldn't stop throwing up. Taking a deep breath, the protagonist shows how much it affected him. But a message appears saying that stage 3 of the tutorial has been completed, and that our hero earned a bonus for defeating the Lich Demon. Intrigued, the boy in the pink shirt asks if that means they only had to survive for 30 minutes. But in any case, Yun-ai is amazing, he adds. Our hero says he doesn't need the compliments, while thinking that it actually wasn't so bad since he came out stronger. Another message appears saying he received Zehar's shackle, a bracelet with a glowing purple stone in the center. To find out what it does, our hero decides to click what looks like a button, opening a door that leads to the next tutorial. The two boys are a bit surprised, and after staring at each other for a few minutes, they decide it's better to go and then stay where they are. After arriving on the other side, they find the environment strange. Looking to the side, they see another player just came through an identical door. Smiling, our hero says it's been a long time since he's seen him. Confused, the other says he just passed through the door. Thinking, Yun-ai remembers what was written in the journal about everyone starting stage 4 together, which means the guy in the jacket will need a lot of luck since he did nothing to grow stronger. Suddenly, other players begin coming out of different doors, and two of them catch the protagonist's attention because they are Du Guillaume and Ju Rai. Curious, our hero figures they must have chosen the red door, judging by their dirty clothes, and that they either fought alone or got rid of the others. Drawing everyone's attention, the mysterious voice announces that 56 players survived, then explains the rules of stage 4. It will be a team competition where one team is made up of everyone in that room. The teams that earn the most points by defeating monsters will win. Park doesn't like this news much, unlike the others who celebrate the fact that the winning team will advance to the final tutorial. The voice then announces that no punishment will be applied to the losing team, and that there are two doors, a white one that lets players defeat monsters to earn team points, and a black one that allows for gaining stats and individual points. It will also provide items every night at midnight. Players just have to use the door command to return to the current room. With the instructions over, the final notice is that even if the team loses, the top 10 players with the most individual points will proceed to the final tutorial. Thinking to himself, Park concludes there's no reason to enter the white door. But when he looks to the side, he realizes Yunja and Jung-gu think differently. Smirking, he says those two are real idiots pretending to be heroes. But after stepping through the black door and ending up in a forest infested with cyclopes stronger than the monsters from stage 2, he realizes that maybe it wasn't the best choice, since now he has to deal with two of the creatures by himself. Looking back, the boy notices something strange and quickly discovers that the two who went through the white door are also there, and have wiped the cyclopes out. Jung-gu then comments on the different environments and how the monsters here aren't that strong yet, though that's not really true for the idiot who chose the white door in stage 3. Not acknowledging Park's presence, Yunja says they should explore a bit more before midnight. The brown-haired boy agrees and, turning around, mocks the guy who chose not to form a team. Jung-gu asks the protagonist how the wrist shackle is. He simply says it's fine, even though deep down he knows the item is excellent. It consumes the user's magic to boost the power of the one wearing it on their arm, which means our hero can use his skills more easily and gain extra attack and defense power if he chooses to infuse his magic. Jung-gu notices his friend didn't explain everything, but the protagonist just plays it off and attacks a monster that appears out of nowhere while thinking that he has 5 days to find that bastard. After that, we see that the first day of stage 4 ends successfully, and Yunja remains in first place on the ranking with a huge lead in points. Seeing Do-hyun's score, the protagonist concludes he must have explored the forest too. Jung-gu then says, as expected, we're the only ones who formed a team. But our hero says, that won't last long. Suddenly, the mysterious voice announces that the opposing team earned 28.5 points and that rewards based on individual scores will now be distributed. Yunja receives 12 coins, which can be exchanged for items or skills on the final day. Reflecting, the protagonist remembers that these items could be extremely valuable, so it's better to save the coins. Then he decides to speak with the rest of the group to make an offer. After introducing himself and catching everyone off guard, he says that he knows a way for everyone to get out of there alive. Smiling, Do-hyun says he's curious to hear the plan, but hopes it's not something stupid like suggesting everyone form a team to earn more points. To his surprise, the protagonist says that's exactly it. Out of nowhere, the man starts laughing loudly. Looking the boy in the eyes, he says it's a real shame because he couldn't care less, then demands a good reason to join the plan. Yoon just simply says the man is right, but that it's worth remembering there's still a final tutorial coming, tutorial no one knows anything about. It might even require teamwork, so having more survivors would be smart. That's why his offer is for them to decide together how many team points each person should earn. For example, 1,000 per day, and since it was his idea, he gets double. The other players exchange thoughtful glances, and after a few seconds, they start agreeing, much to the dismay of Do-hyun. The protagonist then asks what the man is going to choose. Shouting, he asks if the boy thinks it's right to sacrifice himself for those idiots. Confused, our hero questions whether the man even heard what he said about the possibility of having to work together again. Do-hyun says he doesn't believe in that, so the protagonist simply asks if he's made his decision. Sometime later, Jung-woo says he didn't know Yoonja was the type to play the justice hero. The protagonist is confused, but the boy insists that helping people survive like this is heroic. Our hero then says that actually, he's doing it because if their team survives, the other one dies. So, he's just avoiding the death of his own team. The guy in the pink shirt asks if that's enough of a reason to support everyone. But Yoonja says he's doing everything for himself and for the guaranteed rewards, as long as everything goes according to plan. That's why instead of talking, his friend should start running and earning more points, since he only has 890. The two go through the white door again and return to the forest, coming face to face with a giant, furious troll. Without hesitation, the protagonist activates his bracelet and begins attacking with his sword, launching the creature far away with full force. In his thoughts, Yoonja reflects on how much damage his new item deals and how much magic it consumes, requiring half of his mana for just one strike. Shocked, Jung-woo asks if the boy acquired a new ability to be able to do that. He replies that it's almost that. The boy in the pink shirt then wonders what the next monster will be and whether his friend doesn't think they've gone too deep into the forest. Our hero reminds him that high risk brings high reward. With a worried expression, the boy says he knows the protagonist's goal isn't just to survive. After a few seconds of silence, Yoonja confirms this, and says that to achieve his goal, he needs to do more than survive. The boy then asks if it has something to do with returning to the real world. The protagonist says it's something like that, and after a few more moments of silence, says it's time to end the break. Jung-woo asks to rest just a little longer, but suddenly something catches his attention. Without hesitation, he points in a direction, and warns our hero, who widens his eyes at the sight of something golden among the trees. He immediately remembers hearing that someone had found the golden goblin in the forest on the last day of stage 4, but he hadn't believed it since this was an open forest until now. Shouting, he tells the boy that they need to catch that thing because it's a hidden piece of this stage. Meanwhile, elsewhere, we see a group of players gathered and talking. One of the boys says he doesn't care much about winning the team match, but losing is definitely a problem. And since only the top 10 will survive, that means one of the 7 of them will be eliminated, as it's impossible to catch up with the top 4. Another young man agrees that winning the team match will be very hard. Suddenly, someone appears and says he'd like to tell them a bedtime story, catching the whole group off guard, who quickly stand up. Coming out from among the trees, Do-hyun smiles and asks them not to be afraid because he's not there to fight. One of the boys then says he can talk from where he is if he doesn't want to be attacked. The man tells him to stop being stupid and says he also has a proposal to make, one that involves a way to ensure they all make it into the top 10. With a frightening expression, he asks if the group is now interested in hearing him out. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Yoonja and Jung-woo continue chasing after the goblin, who's leaping through the trees and glancing back to give them a mocking grin. The pair stop for a moment, and the boy in the pink shirt says they should give up. Nearly throwing up from exhaustion, the protagonist curses the creature, then punches the tree trunk he was leaning on. Thinking to himself, he says the problem is that the creature might be luring him into a trap. Lying on the ground, the brown-haired boy asks if they really need to catch the goblin. Our hero says yes, no matter how long it takes, even if they only have 3 days. Jung-woo then says it's time to go back. The protagonist agrees, and the boy quickly makes the door appear. Still frustrated, Yoonja reminds himself that the goblin is the key to stage 4, so he'll get it no matter what. Back in the room, the mysterious voice announces that day 2 has ended, and that team points and individual points will now be calculated. Looking around, our boy notices 6 people are missing and wonders if Do-hyun and his group are responsible. When the scoreboard appears, People start complaining that some didn't stick to the agreement. The voice then announces that the opposing team has 69,150 points, prompting Yoonja to act. Approaching the man, he asks why he didn't follow the plan. Coldly, Do-hyun states he doesn't remember ever agreeing to join. Besides, his group isn't desperate for team points. Irritated, the protagonist says he knows they're not the friendliest team in the world, but even so, it's not cool to sacrifice people. In response, the man just spits on the ground. Taking a step forward, our hero says he won't play the savior anymore. Grinding his teeth, Do-hyun says that if the boy keeps acting like that, he'll find out who's really going to die. Big and fearless, the protagonist fires back and tells the man to go ahead and try messing with him. But Jung, who approaches and grabs his shoulder, then asks the boy to calm down since they can't force anyone to join the plan. Besides, they're outnumbered. Furious, the blonde guy asks what all the whispering is about. He draws his sword next, but one of the boys on his team tells him to stop since fighting right now isn't the best strategy, especially if they were the ones who broke the agreement. Stepping forward, the young man informs Yoonja that individual points are more important to them at the moment. The protagonist stays silent and decides to walk away. Do-hyun turns and asks why the boy on his team did that, knowing full well the only way to survive is by killing Yoonja. The boy says he remembers that perfectly, but making a scene doesn't help at all, leaving the blonde guy completely confused. Explaining further, his ally says that the pair who left don't even need team points to survive, but they still offer to help everyone, which means the 9 of them won't be fighting just 2 people. After thinking for a bit, Do-hyun finally understands the situation, and then asks what they'll do to get rid of the boy. Smiling, his ally says it's better to take things one step at a time, since the first target doesn't have to be the duo. A little farther away, Jung-hyo asks what Yoonja was thinking when he almost started a fight. Our hero says it's only a matter of time before that actually happens. While agreeing, the other boy says he still went too far since he knew they can't force anyone to cooperate. The protagonist says he knows that, and he wouldn't mind if the rival group was only after individual points. Then he recalls how everything is happening just like the journal described, about a group of 6 vanishing, which means the enemies are killing for coins and points because they're part of Do-hyun's gang and will keep doing it for their own benefit, preventing the rest from winning the match. Suddenly, Jung-hyo's voice pulls him out of his thoughts. Getting straight to the point, he asks what the boy's plan is, catching him off guard. The protagonist explains that teaming up with him is dangerous because the boy might have to kill people, not just monsters. Jung-hyo asks what he means, but our hero just stares at him silently, then asks him to listen carefully. The 3rd day of stage 4 of the tutorial begins. While running, Yoonja tells his ally that they need to catch the golden goblin. The boy then asks why he's so obsessed, but the protagonist just tells him to wait because he has a plan. The goblin keeps leaping and looking back. But just as it was about to land on the next branch, the protagonist, Kim Yoon-dae, appears. He slices the tree with his sword, sending the creature crashing down hard. Jumping, Yoon-dae says he's finally got it, but the goblin throws dirt in his face, forcing him to stop and cover his eyes. Meanwhile, the little monster uses the chance to swing onto another branch and turns around just to laugh, making Yoon-dae a little irritated. Yu shows up and shouts, telling him to look to the left. When the protagonist turns, he comes face to face with a massive ogre. And Yoon-dae finally realizes this was the Golden Goblin's plan. Even though he's surprised, Yoon-dae thinks this is his only chance. Since the little monster let its guard down due to the ogre's presence, it is more vulnerable. Suddenly, the ogre rips a tree out of the ground and gets ready to attack. Who asks what they should do, but Yoon-dae can only think about whether he can make a throw. Out of patience, the ogre hurls the trunk with full force at the duo. Luckily, the protagonist is very skilled and slices through the wood like butter, also hitting the giant creature, whose body is split clean in 2. This makes the Golden Goblin furious. But before it can escape, Yoon-dae shows up and finishes the job, staring it down firmly. The boy in the pink shirt, Yu, is left speechless by such speed, and apologizes for being just a regular human. Later that night, we see someone searching for Kim Yoon-dae. A girl says she hasn't seen him. Another young man then says they need to go deeper into the forest to find him since becoming stronger is more important than just surviving. Lowering her head, the woman agrees. The young man then says they need to think about the future instead of hiding along the edges. With everyone in agreement, the group sets out to begin their plan. But suddenly, one of the members is attacked. Shouting, the boy demands that the attacker show themselves. Smiling, Park says he'll obey. Beside him, Do-hyun says the courage of the boy who yelled is really touching, especially for someone who's about to die. Confused, the boy asks why they're doing this. The blonde guy, Do-hyun, says he's doing it because he wants to. Trying to save himself, the boy says they can take all of the group's coins, but Do-hyun says he wants the boy's personal points and that he can only get them by killing him. So, it's better to stop talking and finish it all at once. Understanding the message, the man's group begins to draw their swords. Desperate, the girl in the blue shirt begs them not to do this, reminding them that everyone can make it out alive if they work together. But dude Young says he'll do whatever he wants while flashing a wicked smile, then tells them to stop being wee. Suddenly, a scream grabs his attention. Emerging from the trees after taking down one of the boys, Yu Jiang, Yu says they're nothing but scum. Kim Yun also appears and says he warned the boy about what Du Hyung was doing. Park and the blonde guy just stare at each other, showing surprise at Yun Ai's presence. We return to a few moments earlier when it was still daytime. The protagonist had just defeated the Golden Goblin, acquiring several valuable items. As he approaches the remains, he starts looking for something specific. When he finds it, his eyes go wide, holding what appears to be a potion. He checks to see if it's really what he thinks it is, concluding that he was very lucky to get a bottle of the goddess's tears. Yun Da says he's keeping it. Sitting down, Yu Jiang asks if he can pick something. Walking away, the protagonist says yes, but that he should leave some things for him. He then drinks the potion he just picked up, which immediately increases his magic and regeneration by 20. Holding the empty bottle, Yun realizes all the magic he used on the ogre has been restored, thinking to himself how good that feeling is. Suddenly, Yu Jiang calls him over to check out some other items that look very good. Turning around, the protagonist walks back toward him. Meanwhile, his Ellie decides to test something, striking a tree trunk that splits cleanly in two, as if it wasn't even made of wood. Surprised, the boy says it really boosts his strength, referring to the energy blade skill he just learned from a book that was among the items. Dressed in parts of a new armor, the protagonist says that's why he wanted to capture the goblin at any cost. While thinking that he finally got descendant great items, a smiling Yu Jiang, who says Yun really knows a lot about this world and that he noticed it since he chose the red door, as if he could see the future. Yun thinks to himself that it's all thanks to the diary and, turning to him, says they need to leave that place soon because things are going to get intense. Yu Jiang asks if there's anything else to do. With his back turned, Yun confirms there is, leaving his alley. Unsure of what he means. We return to the present moment where Yu Jiang, who is truly furious. Park says they're doing what needs to be done in order to survive. But Yu Jiang, who asks since when doing what needs to be done includes killing people. Smiling, the other boy says that if he's too much of a coward, he'll just end up dead, leaving the young man even angrier. Suddenly the girl who was attacked stands up and starts running, screaming for help. Furious, Du Hyung says she's not going anywhere, but Kim Yun steps in front of the fleeing group. The man then says it was about time the savior showed up and asks why he is so brave and if he has 9 lives. The protagonist replies that he actually only has 1, along with something very special, himself and his own strength. Surprised by the fact that the protagonist attacked one of the girls from his group out of nowhere, Du Hyung thinks he didn't even see what happened clearly, then tells the others that it's time to show the boy how things are done. Turning, he says the duo is pathetic and quickly charges into battle. Yun manages to block the strike with his sword while thinking that his opponent is stronger than Yu Jiang, but then he remembers his bracelet. He says out loud that all that strength will be useless. Eyes wide, Du Hyung wonders if he's really being overpowered right before being thrown back with full force. The other members of the group decide to join forces and attack the protagonist. But Yun is much stronger than they imagined and starts taking them down one by one. Yu Jiang appears and stops Yura from catching Yun off guard. Screaming, the girl orders the boy to get out of her way, starting a fierce sword fight. A bit farther away, Park wonders what the hell is going on, referring to the fact that his group is being slaughtered by 2 boys. Furious, Du Hyung says that's impossible, then charges at the protagonist with everything he's got. Seeing the man coming, Yun says he's truly pathetic and delivers a solid kick right to his opponent's abdomen, sending him crashing to the ground. Without hesitation, Yun strikes him with his sword, leaving the blonde man 1 arm short. Feeling the pain, Du Hyung can do nothing but scream. Staring him down firmly, the protagonist asks for his last words, but the man chooses to beg for his life. Still holding his sword, Yun asks if he has anything to say to the people he killed, but the man just calls him a hypocrite, showing he feels nothing, not even remorse. Yun simply thanks him, because that makes it easier not to feel anything either when finishing the job. For defeating Du Hyung, he receives 14,750 individual points and 48,110 conquest points. We return to Yura, who screams that she was forced to do everything, saying they told her they would kill her otherwise. Yu Jiang remains silent for a few moments while the girl begs for her life. But to her misfortune, Yun appears and says there's no excuse for killing someone and that applies to him as well. Looking at his ally after finishing the job, he tells him not to let his guard down since the girl could have attacked him, and if that happened, he wouldn't be able to save him. Yu Jiang then says he thought the girl was innocent, but the protagonist tells him to stay focused and do what has to be done. As he watches him walk away, Yu Jiang asks where he's going. The boy simply says he has to take care of what's left, referring to Park, who ran away. Exhausted after running for so long, Park says he won't give up that easily. On the contrary, he's going to make the savior beg for their life. Suddenly, a sound grabs his attention. But unfortunately for him, it's not one of the boys, it's an ogre. Reflecting, he says that even his now ed team would have had trouble dealing with the creature. So, the best option now is to run. To his surprise, something attacks the monster, slicing it clean in half. Seeing the scene, Park concludes he's completely screwed now. And when he hears footsteps approaching, he starts to sweat cold. He thinks that Yun must be some kind of monster. Trembling all over, the boy admits he was wrong and promises that he'll never do anything like that again. Yun decides not to say a word. He just attacks, then says there's no point in begging because he never planned to spare him, even if killing scumbags like him leaves a bitter taste in his mouth. Elsewhere in the forest, Yu notices when Yun returns from the mission and asks if he got Park and if he's okay. Looking around, he finally realizes what they've just done. Trying to stay strong, Yun says they should collect the coins from the people they killed, but his friend says he doesn't feel right doing it. Saying that he doesn't feel right either, the protagonist replies that they'll have to get used to it. After a few minutes of silence, Yu agrees. We return to the main room where other players are talking about what the boys did. One boy says the ones who were at the top of the rankings are already gone. But even so, they're still way behind. Suddenly, a voice says that everyone there is going to win. It's Kim Yun-dae, who says the enemies aren't that far ahead. The boy with glasses disagrees, saying the gap is 20,000 points. Unbothered, the protagonist just tells them to keep following the plan. Then he pats Yu on the back and says the two of them will take care of the rest. Sometime later, we see a snake getting annihilated by Yun and Yu who asks if that's what he meant when he said he had a plan, referring to the fact that they have to spend the whole day killing monsters to avoid losing. The young man also says he doesn't know if his friend is kind or something else, but the latter simply says it's time to move on to the next room. Disagreeing, Yu says they've been fighting non-stop for 10 hours. When asked if he's tired, he denies it. And as he tries to say more, he's interrupted by Yun-dae, who is in a hurry to finish the mission and prevent failure. We arrive at day 5 of stage 4 of the tutorial and see the protagonist praising his friend for a job well done. Seated, Yu says he's anxious to know the results, just like the other players who are terrified they may have failed since that would mean elimination. Reflecting, Yun says he did everything he could, starting when he took first place in individual points and dealt with a gang of villains, leaving only the team match to handle. Suddenly, the mysterious voice appears and says that day 5 has been completed and that the calculations for individual and team scores are beginning. To no one's surprise, Kim Yun-dae remains in first place, followed by Yu and Minsu. We learn that the total team score is 219,900, and the opposing team score is 217,550, meaning the protagonist's team passed. Everyone's eyes widen before they start to scream and celebrate. Watching everyone's joy, Yu begins to smile, then tells Yun-dae that they really did it. The protagonist also smiles, but suddenly something strange starts to happen. Already knowing what it is, Yun-dae says he'll see his friend later before disappearing completely. Everyone simply vanishes from the room. Elsewhere, Yun-dae discovers that he set a new high score for team points, and because of that, he receives an achievement as praise for his actions. Opening his eyes, he wonders where he is, then concludes that all his hard work was worth it since all of his attributes increased by 4. Suddenly, a notice appears, giving him 1 hour to choose a reward with the coins he has earned. Looking at the pouch, he realizes he has 162 coins and quickly decides to open the panel to check out his options. However, nothing there increases his attributes, and since he already has enough items, he decides to check the available skills until one in particular catches his attention. It's a skill called Zehar's Magic Source, which provides pure magic. Yunja realizes the skill must be related to his bracelet, as they share the same name. So he decides to get that one, since the item and the skill belong to the same person and both seem very powerful. After making the purchase, the young man spends 160 coins and without hesitation begins the process of learning the skill, which causes his bracelet to start glowing. Thinking to himself, he says that wasn't bad at all. Suddenly, it's announced that stage 5 of the tutorial will begin, and that the reward will depend on ranking and achievements. Seeing that it will be in rank stage, our hero concludes it won't be easy. Out of nowhere, a large door appears. But before entering, Yunja decides to take a deep breath, then starts walking. Opening the massive gate, the young man says that whatever is behind it, he will kill it. After that, we see a stormy sky. Suddenly, someone appears and grabs the protagonist's shoulder. It's a soldier who, quite confused, asks who the young man is and where he came from. Intrigued, Yunja wonders where the monsters are, but the man says there's no time to lose because they need all the help they can get. Another message appears, saying the young man must protect the castle from the cursed undead. Looking down, he quickly understands what that means. And facing the skeletons, he wonders if this is really what he needs to do. At the castle gate, we see several soldiers trying to stop the creatures from entering. But since the enemy army is large, they say they won't be able to hold out much longer, further increasing the sense of desperation. Suddenly, a sword pierces the head of one of the skeletons. It's Yoonja's sword, and he immediately gains 50 achievement points. Without hesitation, our hero slips through the gate's breach to fight. With just one strike, he sends several enemies flying, deciding then not to stop, even to catch his breath. Watching everything from inside the castle, the soldiers are shocked, while the young man continues outside, giving it his all. However, when something hits his gear, he realizes the enemies might be poisonous. He then states that even so, they are slow and weak, so the mission won't be too hard if he stays cautious until sunrise when the creatures disappear. Day breaks quickly, causing the skeletons to begin melting. Still outside, and observing everything, Yoonja notes that he survived the first wave. Suddenly, a soldier approaches and thanks him, saying the castle is much safer thanks to him. Max extends his hand to the protagonist, who returns the gesture and introduces himself as well. Curious, the man asks what the young guy does. Our hero simply says, "It's hard to explain, but I won't be a burden." Crossing his arms, the commander says that in that case, he won't ask anything else, but would like to ask a favor. Explaining the situation, the man says that Selit Castle has been surrounded for over 2 weeks. Intrigued, Yoonja asks how the skeletons keep showing up, but the soldier says they don't know much. It's a real mystery where the creatures come from and who they are. The only good news is that reinforcements should arrive within 10 days, so they just have to survive until then. Thinking, our hero notes this doesn't feel like an rank tutorial, since protecting the castle will be a breeze. In fact, it feels pretty similar to the rank tutorial he read about in the journal. Desperate, Max begs the young man to stay and help. The protagonist says he will, leaving the soldier extremely grateful. Standing up, our hero says he'll take a look around. Night falls quickly, bringing rain, and the undead begin rising from the ground. From the watchtower, the commander wonders where the young man went, then concludes he must have run away, something he already expected. Yelling, he orders squads 1, 2, and 3 to defend the east gate while 4 and 5 cover the south gate. But suddenly, a soldier shouts and tells him to look another way because someone is down there fighting the undead. We see it's Yoonja. He apparently didn't run, he had just gone for a walk. Running, the protagonist tries to help the soldiers hold the gate as the creatures continue trying to break in. Max approaches and asks what's going on. Our hero then says he found the reason why the undead keep coming back. When morning comes again, Yoonja and the soldiers go to the forest. Explaining, the young man says he found undead summoners there, but couldn't do anything because of the rain. Max then says that discovering the cause is already more than enough, and that he insisted on coming along so the boy wouldn't carry all the responsibility. Worried, our hero thinks he'd rather be alone because he doesn't know what's waiting and can't protect everyone. Leading the soldiers, he says they need to hurry. When they reach the place, one of the summoners says it would have been better if the protagonist had ignored what he saw, but he chose to die faster instead. Activating their magic, the hooded figures declare that they are untouchable and will let everyone live until sunset, but when night falls, the undead will take them all to the afterlife. Annoyed, Yoonja asks if they're sure about that and strikes the shield with his sword with all his strength, causing a crack to appear. One of the summoners then says that the young man is not an ordinary human, so they need to hurry and use their power. Suddenly, a buzzing sound emerges. Yelling, our hero orders the soldiers to attack. Without hesitation, they all start pounding the shield. In his thoughts, the protagonist wonders what the summoners are planning, then concludes that something very bad is about to happen. Trying to be faster than the hooded group, the young man finishes breaking the shield, making the soldiers quickly understand it's time to act. But before they can get close enough, something paralyzes them. Confused, the men ask what's happening. Shouting again, the protagonist orders everyone to fall back. But it seems too late. A massive purple lightning bolt crashes from the sky, striking the poor soldiers' head. They begin to shatter while screaming. Horrified, Yoonja wonders if that is the true villain of the tutorial as he feels a chilling sensation. We see a massive creature has appeared before everyone, furiously questioning why the summoners called it for. Trembling, one of the hooded figures says it's because of the boy and points toward the protagonist. Grabbing one of the summoners, the monster makes it clear it's still full of rage as the man begs for forgiveness. But it's no use, as the creature crushes him without a second thought, leaving our hero's group in complete shock. Roaring, the massive winged monster says it senses the presence of a blade imbued with magic. Yoonja asks Max and the others to take care of the summoners. With not much else they can do, the men simply agree. The creature then asks how the boy dares to face it. Raising his sword, the protagonist says he made that very clear. Hearing this makes the monster burst into laughter. It then claims that even though it was summoned in that imperfect form, it will not be humiliated by a human. Reflecting, our hero concludes that his best chance is to infuse his magic into the shackle like he did with the ogre. The problem is that this creature seems far more confident than the monsters he's killed before. Tired of waiting, the monster decides to make the first move, forcing the protagonist to retreat. To avoid getting hit. Surprised, he wonders how the creature suddenly teleported in front of him, but another strike cuts off his thoughts. Determined to counterattack, he says he has to end this quickly while the sun is still up. Then he decides to put half of his magic into the strike he's about to make and just prays it works. With a successful strike, Yunja severs one of the monster's hands, which means he can win if he strikes at its vital organs in the same way. Furious, the creature says the young man is nothing but a filthy human, then asks what that bracelet he's wearing is. Looking up, our hero says he'd rather not say. Raising its other hand, the monster declares that in that case, it's time to die. Placing his sword in front of his face, the protagonist realizes he won't be able to dodge this time. Right before he's hit directly, the other soldiers are left speechless when they see that Yunja is holding the monster's hand back by himself, even though the creature is putting in a lot of force to crush him. This move doesn't sit well with the great demon, and to make matters worse, the protagonist's sword begins to crack until the creature manages to press its hand down completely. But our hero was faster, and backed away. He then concludes that his sword was probably damaged when fighting the undead, and luckily, he has another one. Because he's distracted, Yunja doesn't notice the monster right behind him. He turns around a little too late as the creature lands a punch on him, throwing him back with full force. Trying to get up, the protagonist realizes that his opponent really can teleport. Walking toward the boy, the monster says it will scatter his soul through the depths of the abyss, while Yunja wonders if that ability is unlimited. Then he decides it's time to strike back. Leaping, he aims his sword at a vital spot, but is forced to change direction when the creature's hand comes toward him, making him land back on the ground. Doing what he can, our hero slashes at the monster's feet with his sword, then runs away to get a better jump. Planning to strike the monster's neck, he grips his weapon firmly and lands the first blow, then follows up with a second. The creature then says it no longer feels his magic, which means the fight is over. But what it didn't expect was that the boy had a magic reserve ring, which gave him enough strength to land a third strike right on the spot he had aimed for earlier. Still in the air, Yunja is glad his strategy worked and begins to fall along with the monster's body, which crashes down right on top of him. Standing up, the boy says he was this close to dying. Suddenly, Max appears and asks if he's okay, then says that what he just did was unbelievable and that no one would have survived without his help. Taking a deep breath, Yunja says it was just luck, since the summoning wasn't complete and the sun was still in the sky. But out of nowhere, a sinister voice starts laughing and says, "It's not over. It's the monster." Even on the ground, it insists that if it weren't for its hideous body, it would have won. But still, it says the boy has no idea that he's just a puppet, especially since he doesn't know the price of the power he's received. Raising his sword, our hero tells it to shut up and just accept death. Right before delivering the final blow, the demon says it'll see the boy again soon. Suddenly, a message appears announcing that stage 5 of the tutorial has been successfully completed. Next to the protagonist, Max says it looks like it's finally over. Yunja then asks if the man knows anything about the monster. He replies that it's the god of death, the one responsible for devouring both the living and the dead. Worried, the protagonist wonders if this is the kind of monster he'll have to face after the tutorial. The soldier then says it's time to return to the castle, and that there's a reward for the boy. Thanking him, our hero says that actually, he needs to leave and that it's okay, then asks Max to take care. The man agrees and says he'll reward him next time. Yunja returns to the door he entered through, thinking that behind those gates, there must be a way to see his family again. As he walks through, he arrives under a beautiful pink sky and soon finds what appears to be a temple. After entering the place, a voice asks who he is and what he's doing there. It turns out to be a giant man. Getting no answer, the man asks how the boy got that, referring to the bracelet on his arm, and revealing he knows the item's owner. Yunja doesn't respond to any of the questions and simply asks how he knows Lord Zahar. Crossing his arms, the man says he is a servant of Zahar and his name is Frieren. He wants to know how the boy arrived there. Explaining, the protagonist, Kim Yun-dai, says he passed through the mist and found the temple. Placing a hand on his chin, the man realizes the boy isn't lying. But suddenly, something catches his attention. Looking upward, he tells someone that he understands, then says that Lord Zahara must have developed something for the boy, but he needs to know if he is ready to accept such power, a power that goes beyond the limits of men and may come at a heavy price. Yun-a remains silent and after thinking for a moment, says he accepts. The servant, Frieren, asks if he knows what he's getting into. Our boy says he doesn't, but that he needs it. Intrigued, the man asks why. The protagonist says he wants to see his loved ones again, and will do anything for that. Nodding, the servant says he understands, then extends his finger and touches the boy to grant the power. Yun-a begins to feel something strange until that sensation turns into unbearable pain. bringing him crashing to the floor, screaming. Arian then says it will be as painful as dying, but if he truly wants the power, he must endure it and wait for the process to finish. The protagonist begins rolling his eyes as he wriths in agony, screaming non-stop until he finally faints, making Arian wonder if this will work. Suddenly, the boy begins to rise, then calls out the name of his daughter. We can see strawberry juice dripping from his mouth. Watching without interfering, the giant says the young man really has strong willpower, then asks him not to give up. Crawling on the ground, Yun-da starts begging to die. But a voice tells him that won't happen, and that he must remember the reason he wants to live. Hearing this clears the protagonist's mind. Closing his eyes, he sees his family, the reason behind it all. And reaching out his hand, he says he wants to see them again, concluding that he absolutely cannot give up. As he sits up, Arian asks if he's awake, and if he feels any difference within himself. But Yun-da can only wonder whose voice spoke to him. The giant man then says that his lord's heart is now inside the boy, but that it's a different kind of heart. Placing a hand over the left side of his chest, the protagonist says it really does feel special, then decides to ask Arian something. Arian says he'll answer if he knows. The protagonist then asks what Lord Zahara is, but the man says that's beyond his understanding. Confused, the protagonist asks how that's possible if the entity is the one who brought them, but Arian tells him to stop. It's not time yet. He then says the boy must leave and make good use of the 3 gifts he's received, finishing with a kind good luck. Alone again, the giant says that if it is the will of his lord, he will place his faith in that mortal. We find out that the protagonist spent many conquest points to complete the tutorial, and ended up in Malon, where other players are also present. Thinking, our boy realizes he can understand everyone's language there, and that there's nothing particularly surprising about the place. Suddenly Yu Jiang appears and hugs him, overwhelmed with joy at seeing him again. After the greetings, the protagonist asks why they're there. His friend says everyone is trapped by a transparent wall, but a man yells for silence and cuts the conversation short. We see a man in armor who looks very strong welcoming the players. Introducing himself, he says his name is Walker Elbin and that he has been in that world for 7 years. In his thoughts, the protagonist concludes that they were not the first ones to be transported from Earth to that world. His biggest question is how no one ever noticed since there are so many people there. Shouting, people begin asking if he was the one who built the wall, but he says no, revealing that the one responsible is Lois, the young woman beside him. Showing empathy, Walker says he understands they have many questions, but that only makes the crowd even more furious, and they begin begging to be sent home. Losing his patience again, the man yells for everyone to be quiet, silencing the entire group in a single second. Furious, he says he's trying to help, but everyone there is acting like ungrateful fools. After being scolded by Lois, Walker lowers his voice and explains that the wall is there to protect them and to prevent them from entering dangerous areas, but that he'll explain the rest on the way. He just hopes no one tries to fight him because that would force him to take everyone's life. Leading the way, he says their destination is Milan, the starting village, then states that the real problem lies beyond the mountains and along the roads, where monsters are even more terrifying than the ones in the tutorial realm. Someone asks what's in the mountains. Walker then says angels and demons. One of the boys questions if they are the problem, as he said. The man replies yes without giving many details, then warns everyone to be cautious of those creatures. Sometime later they arrive at the village, and the man in armor says that this will be their first home. Everyone is shocked at how large the place is. The warrior then says they'll receive free housing and food, but only for 10 days, after that, they're on their own. Even so, they should all be thankful to the Sky Ripper clan for their kindness. Next, we see someone complaining about the size of the lodging. It's Yu Jiang. Sitting in front of him, Kim Yun-ah says that since it's free, they can't expect too much. And noticing that his friend isn't very cheerful, he says that must mean surviving here isn't easy. The boy then asks what they're supposed to do now, but the protagonist says he has no idea. Worried, Yu Jiang says they need to find a way to earn money quickly and a way to go home. The protagonist agrees, but in his thoughts, he says going home would mean going to where Mina and Yan are, no matter where that place is. Standing up, the boy in the pink shirt says he's going to take a bath since he can't even remember the last time he did. Taking advantage of being alone, Yun-ba decides to grab the journal, recalling the phrase that said he could see his family again. Flipping through the notebook for a few seconds, the protagonist realizes he can now read that part and decides to start reading quickly before the information vanishes. Focusing, he devours the pages rapidly and finally discovers that someone important also lives there. Suddenly, Yu Jiang returns from his bath and says it's our boy's turn. Closing the book, he says it's fine. Night quickly falls, and with no lights in the room, Yun-ba needs to use a candle to continue reading. Thinking, he says he has an idea of what he needs to do, but there are still some things written that he doesn't understand, concluding that there's not much he can do about the last part. Out of nowhere, a voice from the door catches his attention. Standing up, the protagonist asks who it is, but the person asks him to open the door because they have something important to say. Yu wakes up and asks if it's the dorm supervisor, but the stranger keeps calling the protagonist's name. Frightened, decides to grab his sword, then asks what the person wants with him. Outside, a man introduces himself as Dean from the Brahm clan and says he's there to deliver an invitation, then asks them to relax since attacking each other is not allowed in the city. Suspicious, the boys stare at each other for a few minutes and decide to open the door. Smiling, Dean says it's a pleasure to meet the protagonist, then notices he's not alone. After asking for permission to enter, the young man introduces himself again. Even though the guy already knows him, our boy decides to introduce both himself and Yu, then asks how Dean knows him. The young man then says that everyone's been talking about his performance during the tutorial. And since recruiting talented members is important to his clan, he decided to come personally along with his leader. Curious, Yun asks why he came to do this so late at night. Without wiping the smile off his face, the young man apologizes, but grows serious when he realizes the protagonist isn't falling for his empty talk. Very politely, our boy says he'll look for the clan when he's ready so he can leave now since he won't accept anything until he understands what it all really means. With a dark expression, Dean tells him to come along while he's still being polite. The attitude puts the pair on high alert. Yu then asks if the protagonist knew. He replies vaguely, leaving his friend confused. Explaining, our boy says that the Brahm clan is a scam, actually a place where assassins gather, pretending to recruit rookies only to kill them and steal their items. Furious, Yu says he can't believe people like that have such a big clan. Smiling again, Dean says that in that case, they can just hand over their belongings to be spared. But the protagonist draws his sword, and says that's never going to happen. The man replies that it's a shame, because they clearly have no idea who they're messing with. Out of nowhere, Dean vanishes from sight, reappearing behind Yun, who quickly reacts and blocks the attack. The enemy vanishes again, trying now to strike the brown-haired boy, but he also manages to defend himself, and the protagonist seizes the opportunity to attempt a fatal strike, which of course misses Dean because he's just too fast. Yun then wonders what kind of magic the man is using, while his opponent wonders if the boy is really a newbie since he seems far too powerful for someone who just finished the tutorial. Changing strategies, Dean decides to become truly invisible, which worries Yu. Smiling, the assassin says it's exactly what they think, and that even experienced players can't find him when he's in the shadows. That's why he'll kill both of them before they even notice, starting with Yun, who's right in front of him. But to his misfortune, the protagonist is no ordinary player, and lands a direct hit before Dean can get close enough to attack. Yu asks what his friend is doing, while the enemy wonders how a rookie can see through his ability. Now growing furious again, but afraid of dying, he decides to retreat for now, only to be attacked again from behind by Yun, who had tracked his every move. Shocked, the brown-haired boy asks how the protagonist did that since Dean was invisible. Thinking, our boy concludes it must be his new power. Then says that first they need to deal with the intruder. Worried, Yu asks how they're going to do that, and the protagonist gives the impression he has a plan, given the way he looked at him and smiled. When morning comes, we see that the rumors of what happened have already spread throughout the village, enough to make Walker and another man go straight to the boys' lodging, leaving all the residents stunned by their presence. Upon entering the inn, the receptionist says the boys are in their room. The blonde man says he'll go up then. Meanwhile, Yu can't sit still from how nervous he is. We find out that Dean Aletter had been a player for 2 years, always targeting newcomers to attack them. Looking at the protagonist, Walker asks if he really was the one who killed the man. Our boy says yes and asks if there's a problem with that, thinking that he wasn't expecting a visit from the man. The warrior simply says there's no problem at all and that the reward for Dean's death is 30 gold coins because Dean was a wanted man and the bounty is based on the severity of his crimes. Yu gets excited, but Yun not so much. The boy then asks if his friend already knew. He says he had a hunch because he'd heard that the assassin clan members were wanted. Walker then gets their attention. They ask what they think about the idea of joining the Sky Ripper clan. The two boys are left speechless. Yun decides to ask if the man is serious. Before replying, Walker thinks about how strong the boy is for having killed Dean and how he can't risk him joining another clan. And since a clan invitation is an incredible opportunity for any player, he knows the boy won't refuse. He then confirms that yes, he's serious. We're taken to a moment shortly after that conversation where the long-haired man comments that Walker was too hasty in inviting a rookie. Stopping for a moment, the warrior asks if his friend's eyes are just for decoration, leaving him a bit confused. Laughing, the white-haired man says it was a joke, but as Ellie replies that next time it could get him killed. Walking ahead, Walker says he wasn't joking when he made the invitation, because Yun is definitely an interesting player. We go back to the moment. In the conversation, the protagonist refused the offer, leaving the men speechless. Trying to change the boy's mind, The warrior says that joining a clan is the best thing that can happen to a newcomer. The protagonist says he understands and apologizes for that reason. In his thoughts, Walker wonders what the boy has in mind to be acting that way, then decides to ask what Jung-Hoo's answer is. Embarrassed, the boy says he'll have to refuse too. Without insisting, Walker says he'll send the reward before sunset, and when they receive it, they should use it to fix the wall of the lodging that was broken. Before leaving, he says that if the boys change their minds, they should go to the clan headquarters and mention his name because his offer still stands. Later that same day, someone delivers 30 gold coins to the boys. Holding one of the items, Jung-Hoo says that if a coin is worth $1 million, they won't have money problems anytime soon, then asks why the boy refused Walker's offer. The protagonist says he'll explain at the right time, then asks why he refused. The boy replies that it's because he knew he wasn't the one they really wanted. Smiling, Yoonja says he has a plan, but he doesn't know if it's better than joining the clan. Impatient, his friend says he wants to know what it is. The protagonist then says he wants to find the great magician, which is what they'll do next. The two arrive at Melton Plaza, and upon finding an old man, they ask if he is Mr. Abraham. Turning around, the man asks who they are and immediately warns that using a gate costs 50 gold coins. Yoonja then says he actually just wants to talk to him, but the man says he's not interested. However, he changes his mind when the protagonist says he'll help him find his laboratory. Shooting the boy a sharp glare, Abraham asks how he found out about the place since no one but him knew it existed. Lying, our hero says he heard a rumor that Abraham had been searching for the lab for a long time and thinks he can find it. Suddenly, the old man notices the bracelet on Yoonja's wrist and is surprised, thinking to himself that the item looks familiar. He then says that a vow has kept him there, so if the boy finds the laboratory, he will be rewarded. But he must always remember, if he dares to betray him, Abraham will make sure they both suffer a pain worse than death. Yoonja says he won't forget, while Jung-Hoo is terrified. After some time, the boy asks how his friend knew about that. He says he heard rumors in the city. The brown-haired youth then asks how finding the lab could be better than joining the clan. Our hero says he has a hunch about it, then reveals that the owner of the place, Abraham, used to kill people to perform experiments, becoming known as the Butcher. Panicking, Jung-Hoo asks if that doesn't put them in danger, but the protagonist tells him to stop worrying. After all, the old man is trapped in the village by some force, and all they need to do is find the lab, nothing more. Suddenly, stopping in front of a pile of rocks, the boy says they've arrived. Surprised, Jung-Hoo says it's no wonder no one else found it, considering how tiny the entrance is. Agreeing, Yoonja says it's time to climb. We learn that the discovery of Abraham's lab became a big problem in Melton since the lab was located very close to the village. The biggest issue was the discovery of a chest containing all the experiments conducted by the great magician, along with a reward being offered by the Sky Ripper clan. Inside the cave, Jung-Hoo says he's getting a creepy vibe. Yoonja tells him to stay alert while thinking about how he hopes to earn the reward since he turned down the clan offer for it. The brown-haired boy says he doesn't see anything yet, but the protagonist tells him they should keep moving forward. Sometime later, Jung-Hoo says he doesn't understand why Abraham couldn't find his own lab, showing he knows a little too much. Yoonja says it's because the man lost his memory. The boy then asks if he's talking about dementia or something like that, but the protagonist says no, since the man was a great magician. Talking more than necessary, Jung-Hoo says it must be something related to the oath. Our hero agrees and says a powerful spell could have made the old man lose his memory and trapped him in the village. The boy then says that Abraham must have hidden something very valuable inside to never have asked anyone for help. Suddenly, Yoonja tells his friend to stop walking. Looking ahead, Jung-Hoo's jaw drops because they've just found a pile of corpses. The brown-haired boy asks if the protagonist thinks the old man did that. He says probably, leaving his ally furious at the cruelty of what was done there. Suddenly, the undead begin to rise. Yoonja says he'd expected it, after all, they're in a dungeon. Without hesitation, the two boys get into position to fight, but the enemies decide they'll make the first move. A great battle begins. We see the protagonist striking the monster's non-stop. And just as he's focused on one skeleton, another creature appears out of nowhere to attack from behind, sinking its teeth into the boy's shoulder. He only avoids injury thanks to his reinforced skin. Activating his bracelet with his own magic, he shatters the monster into pieces and throws it far away. Jung-Hoo comes over and asks if his friend is okay. He says he is. The boy then says the fight went better than expected, aside from how gross it was. Looking around, he asks what those creatures are and how Abraham created them. Suddenly, something shiny catches Yoonja's attention, and he quickly crouches to grab it. Surprised, the other boy asks why it was inside one of the monsters. After analyzing it, the protagonist discovers it's a chimera magic gem, deciding to keep the item even though he doesn't know if it's valuable. A few days later, still in the lab, Jung-Hoo asks how long they've been there. Yoonja says probably a week, then asks if the boy has had any rest. Looking around, the boy says that's not the best place to rest, so they better move on. After walking for a while longer, they find a large door and hope it's the last. Thinking to himself, the protagonist says the reward must be in that room. His friend notices that the passage is sealed with magic and says he'll try to cut the chains with his sword. The plan works, and a big explosion follows. Smiling, Jung-woo says he's apparently getting stronger. Impatient, the protagonist tells him to just open the door. The two decide to open the gate together, causing a brilliant flash of light. Seeing what's inside, the boys are shocked. In the center of a large room is a tube with a person inside, with long black hair, apparently unconscious. We're taken to the Sky Ripper clan headquarters where Walker is reading a report about the search for Abraham's lab. After sighing, he says the information is wrong, leaving the man in front of him surprised. The blonde man then says it's not possible that there's been no progress in the search and orders the black-haired man to throw that report in the trash and bring him a real one because it's already been 2 months since they started looking. Furious, he shouts, asking how the powerful Sky Ripper clan hasn't found a single thing in 60 days, while the assassin clan continues roaming the village. After his outburst, Walker tells the man in front of him to leave his office. The man only says he'll take care of everything and exits as requested. Alone again, the blonde man wonders what the young newcomers are up to. We return to Abraham's laboratory where our boys are still trying to figure out what the old man was researching so intensely. Jung-woo says this really looks like the final room. Suddenly, one of the shelves catches the protagonist's attention, and upon getting closer, he decides to pull what looks like a handle, revealing a hidden door filled with potions of different colors inside. Thinking, Yoonja says this must be the final result of the great magician's work. But the purple vial catches his attention since it wasn't mentioned in the journal. Still in thought, he wonders if he should take all of them since it's already time to leave. Suddenly, Jung-woo says the guy inside the tube just moved, and he's blinking like he's just woken up. The two boys stop in front of the tube, and a few seconds later, the man opens and closes his eyes. Intrigued, our hero asks if he's alive while his friend questions what they should do. Yoonja then says he'd feel really bad leaving a human in that condition, so they must get him out of there before leaving. After that, the two boys return to where Abraham is to tell him they found the lab. The old man is left speechless and, approaching, asks where the place is, but Jung-woo says that before they talk, he needs to explain the experiments he did, adding that the man better have a good explanation. A bit confused, the magician asks what was in the lab. The question makes the two boys go silent. Yoonja then asks if the man doesn't remember. Abraham says no, and that all he knows is that he was conducting an experiment there. Annoyed, the brown-haired boy questions why he was even looking for the lab if he doesn't know what's inside. The magician then says it's because he knows that whatever is there belongs to him. Our hero says that in that case, he has a point. He then asks how the old man would reach the lab if he knew where it was, and the old man says he can get out of there for a moment. The protagonist says he'll tell him. The information shocks Abraham, and happy, laughing, he says it was right under his nose all along, but now everything makes sense. Before leaving, he hands a piece of paper and 2 rings to Yoonja as a reward. Taking the items, our hero begins to examine them. He discovers that one is an item that allows him to teleport anywhere, anytime, and the other is the Ring of 198 Properties, which contains special magic. It's on the same level as Zahar's shackles, and he concludes that he gained much more than expected. Suddenly, Abraham says he has to go and starts disappearing. Before vanishing completely, he states that they will meet again. Yoonja says he hopes not, while Jung-woo asks if it's okay to let the old man go like that. The protagonist says he doesn't know, but there's no point arguing with someone who lost their memory, and that they already got the most important thing, referring to the purple potion. Smiling, he says that must be why the old man was looking for the lab. But then we see Abraham again, apparently quite happy with what he found. 10 days later, we learn that everything turned out fine, even though Jung-woo had been worried. Happy, the boy says that everything they gained, including new items and better accommodations, was thanks to Yoonja. With everything going according to plan, he finishes by saying that the 2 weeks inside the dungeon were worth it. But the protagonist says there's still something they need to do, making his friend nervous. Before explaining, our hero throws potions to his friend, who asks what's inside those balls. Yoonja simply tells him to drink, starting with a red one, but to be careful as it's really good and not a single drop should be wasted. Even though he's confused, Jung-woo decides to obey. Suddenly, he says he feels strange. We see that something is also going wrong with the protagonist. Out of nowhere, both begin to scream. Thinking, Yoonja notes that drinking it all at once wasn't the best idea, since before boosting their stats, the liquid will burn them from the inside. Sweating and gritting his teeth, he says that even so, this pain is much better than the one he felt in the temple, which means it'll pass quicker, too. Well, at least that's what he hopes will happen. After a lot of screaming, we see the protagonist panting. Sitting down, he asks if his friend is okay. The same says yes, but thought he was going to die. Worried, Jung-woo asks what time it is, and how his friend is doing since he drank 2 at once. Standing up, Yoonja says he's fine because the red potion helped him recover faster. His friend then says the potions were really amazing as they boosted all his attributes. The protagonist agrees, and says the old man truly deserves the title of magician, and it's a good thing he didn't drink the potions himself. Confused, the brown-haired boy asks why Abraham didn't do that. But our hero says he has no idea. And now it's time for them to visit the Sky Rippers clan. The young man then asks if it's not a bit late for that. Agreeing, the protagonist says it's better to leave it for tomorrow. Then, he picks up the journal to read what's written on the next page. After a quick glance, he discovers something extremely shocking. Grabbing his sword, he yells for Yu Jiang. Quickly getting up, his friend asks him to wait. The two head to the Sky Ripper clan, and Yun Da starts banging on the door non-stop. Nervously, he says he made a mistake and there's no more time to waste. He shouts loudly, warning that it's an emergency, until the long-haired man opens the door and asks what the commotion is about. Getting straight to the point, Yun Da says he needs to speak with Walker, but the man says it doesn't work like that and there are procedures for scheduling a meeting. The protagonist then says it's about Abraham's dungeon, sparking the man's interest. He insists that he needs to speak with Walker immediately. Suddenly, someone starts approaching. It's the armored warrior, who overheard the commotion. Intrigued, he asks what's going on there. Yun Da then says there's something he needs to say about Abraham's dungeon. The man asks if he knows where it is. Our boy confirms, and the guy says the kid is truly impressive. He adds that he knew it wasn't just luck when they defeated Dean's gang. Shouting, the protagonist tells him to pay attention because he discovered Abraham is on his way to attack Milan in his new body. The revelation shocks Yu Jiang, but doesn't faze the two clan members. The long-haired man then asks what he's talking about. Suddenly, someone else approaches and says it's very kind of them to come out and greet him. The stranger is none other than Abraham, now looking 30 years younger. Yu Jiang panics and shouts that this is the guy who was inside the tube in the lab. Yun Da agrees and says they should have killed him. His friend then says it was impossible to guess that was Abraham's new body, not to mention the unbreakable glass. Suddenly, something flies toward the protagonist, which he narrowly dodges. Walker decides to speak to the stranger and says he forgot to introduce himself, but Abraham says he has nothing to discuss with him. He only wants what Yun Da took. Smiling, Yun Da says that if he means the potions, he already drank them all. The enemy then says he's actually after the shackle, and if the boy refuses to remove it, he'll take the item along with his arm. Confused, Yun Da asks what Abraham knows about it, but he just replies that he knows more than the boy does, so it would be better to hand it over without resistance. Suddenly, something stops the stone spears from hitting the protagonist. It's Walker's sword. He steps in, saying he thought this Abraham guy had died days ago. He then asks how he escaped and got a new body. The magician decides to remain silent. The man says he didn't expect an answer anyway. Looking at Yun Da, he says the boy has a lot to explain later, but to his surprise, the protagonist is no longer behind him, as he dashed forward to attack Abraham. Shouting, Walker says the man is way too strong for a rookie. With a wicked grin, the magician says the boy really wants to die young. He then launches a lightning attack, which makes the armored warrior worried. The surprise is that they don't know how strong Yun Da really is. With just one swing of his sword, he sends the lightning back at the magician. Smiling, the protagonist thanks him for the ring, which just proved very useful. Walker laughs, making the man furious and distracted enough not to notice someone else approaching from behind. With a crushing punch, the long-haired man kicks up a cloud of dust as he strikes Abraham. But everyone is surprised to find out that the man can fly. In the air, he thinks his body is still too weak. And before he can do anything else, a barrier appears out of nowhere and traps him. Lois approaches and asks what's going on. Walker then says, the butcher is back and extremely angry. But for now, the young woman should keep him locked up tight, and she'll understand everything later. Making a speech, the warrior says, Abraham is in the Sky Ripper's territory and should know his place. Thinking to himself, the magician says not everyone there poses a threat, but Walker and Lois are the real problem. He then decides to retreat for now. Smiling as he disappears, he tells everyone to enjoy themselves while they can because he'll be back soon. All that remains is the cage. The warrior then says he's disappointed in the young woman who created that useless barrier. Lois responds that there was no way to handle Abraham. Turning around, Walker says it's time for some explanations now since the boys seem to know a lot, so they should follow and obey him. Inside the clan headquarters, Yu Jiang discovers that the potions Yun Da drank were made through the deaths of people. Yun Da apologizes for not saying anything earlier, while Walker says that explains the boys' levels of magic and strength. Lois asks if it's true they took the potions instead of Abraham, and Yun Da confirms it. The protagonist says the man created the potions to gain power quickly. Arrow in his eyes, the warrior says he knows exactly what the magician wanted to do with that power. Yun-na says he also knows it was a massacre, since the magician holds a deep grudge against people for some reason, and by killing them, he can vent his anger and gather more ingredients. Worried, the young woman asks how he managed to reach the lab if he was imprisoned. Our boy says that he doesn't know. Standing up, Walker says that either way, what matters is that they know Abram will return to make more potions. Yun-na says that's why he came to ask for help. Even if he was a bit reluctant, the warrior acknowledges that the boy saved the village. Since Abram arrived there incomplete because of him, and for that, he'd like to thank him. But before it all ends in celebration and handshakes, he says he wants to know how the boy got all that information despite being a rookie. In his thoughts, the protagonist admits he was careless, and wonders what to do now. Suddenly, another armored man bursts into the room, shouting that something's happening outside. Walker asks what it is, and the man says there's a horde of monsters heading toward the village. In the middle of the night, the villagers begin screaming along with the players who recently arrived. One of the monsters, completely indifferent, just charges at the people but is stopped by what seems to be an invisible wall. Shocked, the man who is about to die asks if that's a shield. Next to him, another young man says yes, and that it's a shield made by Lois, which appears when a state of emergency is declared. The mage then announces that the clan's top priority is everyone's safety, and the destruction of the creatures. That's why the Sky Ripper clan asks all residents to follow their instructions. A bit saddened, Yu thinks about how powerful everyone else is except him, concluding it might be better to stay behind. Next, we see Yun-na and the clan members running to battle the invaders. Without hesitation, the monsters also charge toward them, forcing the protagonist to strike first to defend himself. Thinking, he says that was way too easy, and maybe it's because of the potions he drank. Looking ahead, one of the men asks how many monsters there are. Yun-na, however, only seems interested in testing his new ability. But Walker is faster, and with just a hand gesture, he slices the raging creatures in half, sending pieces flying everywhere. Taking the lead, he tells everyone it's time to attack. Shocked, our boy wonders what kind of move that was, realizing that the warrior is incredibly strong. We return to the lab where Abram complains that he's not receiving enough souls. Irritated, he says tens of thousands should have died by now, which means that group of fools interfered. Now the ingredients will only be enough for a single potion. The protagonist's group quickly arrives at the cave. Lois comments that it took a week to reach the final room, but Walker says they now need to make it in 2 days. Suddenly, the long-haired guy warns that they have company, and they're getting closer. Taking the lead, a mage says it's time to fight and then causes a powerful explosion with just one hand. Watching the scene, Yun-na concludes that these people really are on another level, and maybe they have a chance against Abram. The mage then says there's something glowing inside the creatures. The protagonist explains that they're magical gems that function like a heart, allowing the monsters to move. Understanding the situation, the young woman says those creatures could last a long time with that. Walker then says that means Abram has been planning this for years, all to destroy Milan. Intrigued, the mage asks how the magician managed all this, but the warrior says he doesn't know and that it's time to move forward. Yun-na stays behind because he can't stop staring at one of the magical gems. Next, we see Yu fighting off several creatures alongside Lois, who protects him when necessary. Nervously, he thanks the young woman, who tells him he should rest because he looks exhausted. The boy then says he needs to stay with Yun-na since he didn't do anything when Abram showed up earlier. Approaching him, the mage tells the boy not to be so hard on himself. After all, it hasn't even been a month since he arrived and he already has the skills of people who have lived there for 2 years. But that doesn't seem to help much, as the boy grips his sword and, walking away, says he just doesn't want to be a burden, leaving Lois a little sad. Meanwhile, in the lab, Walker tells Abram that if it were him, he would have fled far away. But the magician starts laughing, saying he has no reason to run from someone like him, and that he only did it before because he didn't have what he has now and because he wasn't in his own home. He then causes the whole environment to shake. A massive cave rises, towering and imposing. Screams echo from within. Lois is lying on the ground, completely drained and powerless. Struggling, she tries to lift herself up. Walker is also straining to get to his feet. Inside a vast library, he asks Abram what he's done. The man, standing in the center of a magic circle, reveals that he worked hard to conjure the space to drain human souls. He explains that he designed the magic circle to absorb the souls of those who died in Milan. Leaving the young man on the floor, he continues mocking, saying he reduced the circle's range and increased its strength since he expected visitors. The weakened boy admits that the magician title he received is quite fitting. Ironically, the mage thanks him for the compliment but says he's not about to save them just for saying he's good at what he does. Walker then gets fed up and mocks the magician, calling him pathetic for depending on a magic circle. Irritated, Abram insists he can say whatever he wants, he's still going to die first. He launches fireballs at the warrior. The magician's evil eyes glow as he casts the spell. While trying to escape, Walker reflects that there's nothing more he can do. The fire rains down on him like meteors. He stares at it, wondering how it ended up like this for him. When the flames hit their mark, they create a cloud of smoke, spreading fire everywhere. As the mage looks at his work with satisfaction, he doesn't realize someone is behind him. But when he's struck by a sword, he spins around sharply, very surprised to see Yun that. In disbelief, he asks how the boy is still able to move. With his hands, he unleashes another spell to attack the other boy, who quickly dodges. Not even Yun seems to know exactly how he managed to recover. Holding his sword tightly, now covered in the magician's blood, he says that's exactly the answer he's looking for. This whole time, while the sorcerer performed his act and bragged about the magic circle, the boy was behind him, hidden. Listening to his words, he wondered why he wasn't feeling anything. If the circle was designed to drain human souls, the fact that he was fine made no sense, unless it was because of Zahar's bindings, heart, and magic source, which he carried with him. So that's it, he concludes. At that moment, he realizes why Walker acknowledged the magician's title. He was just trying to draw attention because he saw Yun approaching from behind. At that moment, the young man realizes he has to act fast and take the chance since the magician is distracted and has lowered his guard. It's finally time to use the potion he carries in the vial. The sorcerer glares at him furiously and realizes that indeed, the bindings have made him immune to his magic. Reflecting on how he failed to notice the boy approaching, he feels he's losing focus because the circle is consuming too much of his power. But if he closes the circle, he'll have to deal with both of them at once. He concludes the best move is to eliminate the boy with the shackle. Yunja makes a quick and stunning move. Leaving no time to think, he simply acts and slices the magician clean in half with his sword. When he realizes it was just a shadow, the real Abraham is already projecting himself behind him, about to unleash a new spell. Stating that he won't make the same mistake twice, an explosion blasts the fighter's body backward, but he quickly activates his fortification skin. Leaning on his sword, unable to move, Elvin thinks how pathetic it is to hope that a newbie will save the day. He's watching the fight, unable to do much, while the young man crashes to the ground with the mage heading straight toward him. He knows it makes no sense that the boy is the only one untouched by magic, and for that reason, he's everyone's only hope. The battle continues brutally. Yunja doesn't give up and faces the mage with all his skill. He moves quickly and manages to dodge the lightning bolts fired at him, but simply dodging attacks isn't necessarily the best option. As he runs back and forth, he tries to guess how much magic the mage is capable of casting. At the same time, the mage keeps taunting him, comparing him to a cornered rat. Chains rise from the ground and wrap around the boy's foot. Suddenly, he finds himself trapped. Using his sword, he tries to break them with the force of his strikes, but they're under the effect of an enchantment. Several spikes are launched toward the boy. Desperate, he wonders if his skill is still working. The mage bellows that this is the end for him. Staring with a terrible gaze, he announces his imminent death. But suddenly, all the spears slow down and fall to the ground. The boy's chains break apart effortlessly. Lying on the floor and holding his head, the mage wonders what's happening. His body begins to melt, and he thinks he's losing his soul. Drained by his own magic, Elvin, immobilized, looks relieved at what he's seen. Disbelieving and weakened, the sorcerer screams, asking what the boy did to him. The elixir's vial is then thrown toward his hands, completely empty, leaving the mage in total despair. Weakened, he screams that it's not possible, revealing that this was the very potion he had made, a soul-stealing potion, with now only a single drop left. Yunja continues confronting the mage, saying he created that potion to return his soul to his old body but gave up on drinking it. Somehow, he managed to take advantage of the situation and use it against the mage, who still doesn't understand how that's possible. The boy reveals he soaked his own sword with the liquid, which is now acting to carry the soul into the mage's other body. At the same time, the circle is pulling the soul. The mage reflects on how he'll interrupt the power and return to his old body, but he can't move, not even crawl. Desperate, he begs the boy to carry him to the center of the circle, where he'll deactivate the magic and save his friends. The boy seems to agree. Relieved, the mage smiles, believing he's managed to convince him. Suddenly, the sorcerer is sliced again by the sword. Completely weakened and wounded, he groans in pain as the boy explains he noticed the use of the teleportation ring. Without hesitation, he makes a dead guess at the mage's plan to enter the circle and teleport. Having his plan exposed, the sorcerer becomes furious and impatient, writhing on the floor like a cockroach. That's when he's hit by a strong kick, sending him flying. Bravely, the young man says he'll save his friends himself, and that if the mage answers his questions, maybe he'll walk out of this alive. Even so, he admits he'll still need the mage to get rid of the portals first. While the man glares at him, furious, the boy picks up his friends one by one, carrying them to a safe spot and laying them against a wall. Elvin seems embarrassed for not having given the boy more credit. He also shows concern for his friend's well-being in this situation that has spiraled completely out of control. Fearless, the boy walks back into the library and says he'll be quick and everything will be fine. Leaning against the stones, Elvin looks disturbed by everything happening. Back in the library, Yunja begins the interrogation with the mage. The first question is who told him about the lab, since the mage had already lost his memory, and wouldn't be able to recall it himself. Angrily, the boy asks even more aggressively who was responsible for revealing the lab's location, knowing all the risks. Mocking, the mage asks if it wasn't the boy himself who told him. Yunja loses his patience and raises his sword against the mage, to which he immediately replies that he also doesn't know who it was. The boy is surprised by this statement. Recalling his memories, the sorcerer explains that the person was disguised in a robe and only left a piece of paper in his hands before leaving. While watching him on the ground, the boy thinks to himself that the mage doesn't seem to be lying. He then moves on to the second question, how did he know about the shackle? That was obvious, of course, he would know since it belonged to the person who had imprisoned him before. Surprised, the boy asks if it was Lord Zahar who did it. But the mage scoffs at his ignorance about the power of that object. Seeing the boy's furious eyes, the mage laments that someone like him doesn't deserve to possess such a treasure. Still pinned to the ground, but answering every question, the mage just wants this interrogation to end. However, one more question remains. The boy begins, filled with indignation. What he most wants to know is why the mage killed all those people and filled his lab with corpses and experiments. Hearing that leaves the mage completely stunned, as he never intended to kill all those people like the boy is suggesting. Yunja is totally confused by this. The mage says he only needed materials and had never dreamed of using the human body until some bastard showed up. Distressed, he doesn't even finish his thought before yelling if that answers everything the boy wanted to know. Suddenly, he bursts into a sinister laugh. Standing in front of him, the boy doesn't understand. The sorcerer then says, the boy thinks he's some sort of moral saint, but he must have killed a lot to get this far. He continues, saying that at first, he killed only in the name of experiments. But with a terrifying and sadistic gaze, he reveals that killing became an obsession, one he no longer needed any reason for. Before he can go any further, a strike lands from the sword, and a clenched fist hits him squarely in the head. Still holding his hand up, the boy asks, incredulous, how someone could kill just for the sake of it. Staring at him without mercy, he emphasizes that those sacrificed people had reasons to live. They were someone's family. Finally, he announces that he's changed his mind. He doesn't think he should show mercy to someone so utterly evil. Without thinking, and burning with rage, he draws his sword and strikes the mage once again, hard. Outside the vast cave, the trees rustle. A hooded young woman is sitting on the rocks. Someone appears behind her and announces that Abraham is dead. The other hooded figure can't believe it happened earlier than expected when he had only killed a few thousand people. They reflect on having chosen him for the mission, and conclude that their biggest mistake was underestimating the talent of humans. Still, it's deeply disappointing for them to have failed. And now the only thing left is to return to where they came from. However, the hooded woman seems unwilling to return with nothing to show. The two take flight, concluding that there will be more chances for them in the future. Meanwhile, stone monsters attack Jung Yu with full force. In the middle of the battle, he positions his sword to strike but is surprised by the monster's sudden change. They abruptly turn and run off in another direction. The boy doesn't understand, and is shocked by what he just witnessed. A sharp sound rings out across the city night. The blue sky glows above the player's headquarters. Inside the office, Elvin speaks with his partner about the number of casualties reaching 20,000. He and his friend are concerned about the number and conclude that most of them must have been new and inexperienced players. The boy explains that some of those gems will be distributed to players in Melton, and they deserve a reward after all. Changing the subject, Elvin asks how his friend is feeling. Before answering, his friend teases Elvin for worrying too much and says he's fine, that he didn't suffer much physical damage. The young man then finally asks about Yoshiho. His friend sadly says their companion hasn't responded, as if her soul has left her body. Frustrated, Elvin slams the table and regrets having led them into that mess with the mage. His teammate tells him not to blame himself. Even so, from inside the room, it's possible to hear him lamenting that the worst might have happened if that player hadn't been nearby. While walking and talking, Yunja tells Elvin that he and his partner plan to head to another village. With their current skill level, other villages will bring better opportunities, but Meg tries to convince the boy to join the clan. Yunja thanks her, but declines the offer. Elvin throws it in her face that he already knew he wouldn't accept, but even so, she insists on leaving the doors open. She gestures for Elvin to be quiet and tells the boys they just need to say her name anywhere, and they'll be found. Uncovering her mouth, the girl asks which forest village they're thinking of going to. Talking in the courtyard, he reveals that he plans to go to Darkwood. Both Elvin and Meg are shocked and ask why he chose Darkwood. Surprised, he asks what's wrong with Darkwood and finds out it's a place inhabited by third and fourth year players. Meg explains that most villages have a clan responsible for patrol and security, and in Darkwood, the clan in charge is the Assassin Clan. The place is basically a lawless land and has the highest death rate among all the villages. Sweating, his partner suggests he chose the wrong village, but Yoonja denies it and says this is the right one. Elvin loses patience and questions whether he really knows what he's doing by going there at this time of year. The boy turns to his friend and says he doesn't have to go with him if he doesn't want to, he can stay or head elsewhere. Besides that, the young man says he's sorry, but emphasizes that his choice was made long ago when Yoonja saved him from death, revealing an emotional moment that his place has been by his friend's side ever since. He then feels awkward because of Elvin and Meg's reaction. The declaration sounded too romantic, and the boy looks embarrassed. Then Elvin brings up the rewards he set aside for them. He offers 2 rings that he took from the belongings of the mage. The two look amazed upon seeing them. Still, Elvin explains that the clan decided to keep the teleportation ring in order to reorganize the portals. Yuja is very thankful for the gift and says it's more than enough. The player then asks them to identify the item and find out what it's capable of. Upon the signal, the ring glows with a magical blue light on the boy's finger. The clock ring reveals itself as an artifact used by the mage to manipulate and tame time. Enchanted, the boy realizes this is a legendary level item. The two are very happy and satisfied, having never even seen items like these before. Elvin and Meg then say their goodbyes and remind them to be careful and take care. Yuja thanks them and says he hopes to see them again someday. With his new ring on his finger, he grips the scroll tightly in his hand. Then he says the name of the destination, Darkwood, out loud as the scroll unrolls with a bright blue glow. The two vanish from the courtyard in the blink of an eye, leaving the girl behind, staring at the space. The silence is broken by a pinch to Elvin's ear. Meg is furious because he gave them not just 1, but 2 rings that could have remained in the clan's possession. But Elvin believes they deserved it, and doesn't care what the clan leader will think. As they walk through the streets, they reflect that the clan might blame them for the incident, but the truth is they got very lucky. Meg agrees with him and seems embarrassed to admit that he really made the best and most correct decision. He then asks why the pinch, and the two continue teasing each other as Yoonja's journey continues. Kim Yoon and Yoo Jeom finally arrive in the village of Dar. The two walk with caution. Looking at the scenery of mist, darkness, and gray buildings, Jeom says this must be the place they were looking for, the village of assassins, Dar. Afraid, he asks why his partner chose this village specifically, noting that it's even bigger than Milan. Seeking revenge, Yoon says this is where he will find the bastard he's been searching for. Surprised, Jeom asks who this person is. With fury in his eyes and a thirst for justice, Yoon replies, the person who destroyed my family. He then opens his journal, carefully reading what's written. That bastard was here appears as a scribbled message between the notebook's lines. The scene shifts to a nightmare. Kim Yoon is on his computer, focused, when his phone rings. His wife's name is on the screen. He answers with a smile and says he'll be late getting home from work. But on the call, his wife begs someone not to kill her. The protagonist immediately panics, but the call ends. He stares at the phone in complete shock before running out of the room. When he opens the bedroom door, he sees his wife collapse on the floor, bruised and battered. His panic returns full force as the scene shifts again to a rainy street, with his injured wife on the ground. A demonic-looking figure mocks him, saying their pleas were a sweet sound to hear. Yoon looks on in shock before letting out a loud scream of pure rage. In that moment, he fully wakes up from the nightmare, sweating as he recalls what he saw. His companion, Yoo Jeom asks if he's okay or if he had another nightmare, but Yoon reassures him. Jeom doesn't believe he's really okay. Suddenly, a piece of paper is slipped under their door. It announces that anyone who wants to join the assassin clan must gather at the plaza. His friend asks what it is, and Yoon replies that these people are faster than he expected. He also says they're going to use this trial to find the murderer. At the plaza, one boy seems impressed, asking if all the gathered people are candidates for the clan. A bearded man introduces himself as Helder Silfman from the assassin clan. He remarks that many crazy people want to join their group, which is brilliant. He pauses briefly before continuing, stating that they have a rule not to annihilate their own clan members, but he doesn't care. He just hopes they keep their mouths shut about their requests. He then announces the beginning of the trial. The test will be simple. It requires the head of a specific person, chosen from a list of targets living in Darm. One of the clan members tells them to have fun. The protagonist thinks it's a bad idea to stay there, not knowing who's after your life. Someone in the crowd yells that they won't be able to find one person among so many and attacks a youth nearby. Jeong calls the man crazy, but his friend just says they should get out of there. As they walk, they don't understand how people can be so insane. The protagonist believes the ones doing the hunting are probably also part of the test. He explains that after his wife and daughter were gone, he quit his job to find the man responsible. He was determined to complete his revenge, otherwise, coming to this world would make no sense. He decided to look for the person responsible later, but now he thinks it's possible his target is participating in this year's trial. To find him, he'll look for the killer engraves on his victims. But Jiang, who thinks that plan is complete nonsense. Before Yun can finish his sentence, they realize they've walked into an ambush. One of the mobsters jokes that he must be a rookie, but he doesn't mind destroying him. The protagonist simply says he'll let him live if he answers his questions. The villain can't believe what he just heard. Elsewhere, a man tells his boss that he set up an entertaining situation, especially by putting the rookie with those types of people. He laughs and says he can't wait to see who wins. The underling thinks the newcomer will win, and the boss asks whose side he's on. The man says he's on the maniac's side because he has a super useful skill. Excited, the boss says he can't wait to see who betrays him. In the fight, the protagonist asks if the men know someone who kills people and leaves an X mark on their bodies, but they don't know anything and charge toward him, ready to attack. One of them grabs his sword and tries to strike Yun Bai, but he manages to dodge all the attacks. The villain can't understand what's happening or what kind of moves he's using. Then another man joins the attack, throwing a knife that Yun blocks effortlessly. He keeps dodging every blow and even counterattacks with ease. As another man comes at him, getting a blade close to his neck, Yun reveals a new ability, time manipulation. Calmly, he watches the object approach. He rewinds time to observe the situation, knowing he can't use the magic for more than 2 minutes. He approaches the man who was about to attack him and, with all his strength, delivers a powerful punch, sending him flying. At that moment, the protagonist notices that Jian, who has handled the other thugs with ease. He once again grabs one of them by the collar and asks if he knows anyone who marks victims with an axe. Terrified, the man responds that it must be the serial killer from Aeon. Yun Bai orders him to give more details. The thug says he also lived in Aeon and knows of him. The protagonist asks if that person is here, but the man needs to be sure he won't be killed for talking. The boy nods. The man then says that the bastard is in Darkham and that he saw him not long ago, looking to take part in the trial. When they are led to a location, they find a pile of corpses, each with this mark. Determined, the protagonist demands to be taken there immediately. In a secluded house, a man screams, begging for his life. His executioner thanks him, saying he enjoys hearing such pleas. He asks if he should let him go or if he should end the life of the woman who is also tied up there. The man begs him not to, but ends up having to watch as the girl is attacked. The executioner says he got it wrong. He should have said to kill the girl and let him go, but it doesn't matter because he would have committed the crime either way. He laughs at the situation, saying, "This world is a lot of fun." He pulls a photo from his pocket. It's Kim Yun Bat. He says that now they've finally met again. Meanwhile, the three continue on their way. Jiang, who asks if the protagonist is okay, and the hero just asks them to keep going. Upon arriving at the house, their guide says the executioner is on the 3rd floor. Yun confirms it is indeed the place. He turns the doorknob with determination, ready to enter. As he walks slowly through the house, the man guiding him suddenly tries to stab him with a knife. With full force, Yun blocks the attack and delivers a strong punch to the man's face. But the man grabs his arm and begins to use some kind of power. Realizing what's happening, the warrior shouts for Jiang to duck as he throws the man hard to the ground. An explosion rips through the house, destroying everything. Another man passing by looks in fear at the flames. He realizes that probably nothing usable will remain. He was after the rookie, but now he'll have to find another target. Behind him, a man comments that he looks worried. Terrified, the boy asks who that person is. The same executioner calls him stupid. Irritated, the young man challenges him to a fight. Suddenly, other allies of the executioner appear. He says he's always impressed when he finds dumb people, but this one is definitely dumber than him. Before he realizes it, the boy is attacked directly in the neck. The villain says that's why you should follow his orders. Later, he wonders if his plan really worked. He manipulated people to create that strategy but didn't imagine the protagonist would fall for it so easily. After being hit by that explosion, he's probably no longer alive. Then he notices something below him, and gives a wide, satisfied smile. Through the flames, Yu Jiang emerges, carrying an injured Kim Yun Bai in his arms. He finds it amazing that after that explosion, his friend can still carry him. He asks if his partner is okay, and he confirms. But at that moment, he remembers something. Elsewhere, the executioner spins an object in his hand, and with a smile, he and his team head toward the house. According to him, Jiang is someone he can deal with easily, and Yun Bai likely won't be able to do much. It all seems like a big joke to him. As he gets closer, he sees that both of them are unharmed. He can't believe what he's seeing. Kim Yun Bai is not injured. Meanwhile, the warrior says it's been a long time since he and Park Hyun-sum last saw each other. Back at their dormitory, Yun has some wounds, but he uses his ability to heal himself, though it requires a lot of mana. Still, Jeong-yu is happy to see him doing better. The warrior explains that at the moment of the explosion, in the very instant he shouted for his friend to duck, his solidification skill was upgraded to magical armor. Jeong-yu finds it amazing that he managed to gain a new ability at such a moment. His friend asks what he remembered before all that. The protagonist pulls something from his pocket. It's the photo of a man he now remembers clearly, Park Hyun-sung, the man who destroyed the life of his daughter and why. Jeong-yu then realizes that the warrior's true goal is the executioner who ruined his family. He wants to know if that was the real reason he came to this world and how he even knew the man's face. The protagonist says he gave up his entire life to begin hunting him down. He saw him attacking a girl and decided to pursue him relentlessly. He almost finished him with his own weapon, but several police officers ran toward him and restrained him. After that, he never heard anything else about the man. Over time, that monster turned into a myth, a legend. So he went back to work and tried to live a normal life. For the warrior, seeing that photo triggered something inside him. Irritated, Jeong-yu grabs his sword and yells that they have to go capture that bastard. But Yoon-ah says that's not necessary, because Park Hyun-sung will come after him. Even so, that might actually be a good thing. Maybe he'll be able to end this once and for all. We then return to the scene, where the executioner sees the two friends and asks if they were just putting on a show. The man says he won't answer their questions. He only wants to see him destroyed. Park Hyun-sung laughs and says the warrior surely went through a lot just to find him. The warrior says he's a coward who only attacks the weak. Agreeing, the villain says it would be stupid to go after someone stronger than him. There are women and children everywhere, just like Yoonja's wife and daughter, he concludes. The two friends exchange glances. Jeong-yu says he can handle the other guys. Yoonja should go after the enemy. That's perfect because the protagonist can focus all of his energy on that bastard. The executioner thinks it's all just talk. He walks away, ordering his team to attack. But before that, he says goodbye to Yoonja. However, the protagonist won't let that happen. There will be no next time. He quickly reaches his enemy and attacks with everything he has. Fallen to the ground, Park Hyun-sung shouts for his allies to help him. The men rush toward him, but Jeong-yu uses his energy to block them with a giant ring. He declares that they are just side characters in this story. The executioner is panicked by what he sees. Yoonja's fist comes down hard on his face. He punches Park Hyun-sung with all his might. Still with some energy, the injured man asks if the boy knows what he's gotten into, but for the first time, that monster can only feel fear. Yoonja keeps hitting him mercilessly, fury blazing in his eyes. His massive hand covers the villain's face as he writhes on the ground. Park Hyun-sung tries to fight back, but he flails helplessly. The young man doesn't stop. He powers up his punches, and kicks even more. He's completely furious, and unstoppable. A heavy punch nearly hits Yoonja in the face, but he manages to dodge. Even while taking a beating, Park is impressed by Yoonja's strength. The man collapses, weakened as he watches Yoonja rise, towering in the shadows. Suddenly, Yoonja's arm is covered in magical armor that molds to his body as he activates the skill. Once again, he charges into the fight. Without hesitation. His opponent hits the ground, cursing him. But he doesn't care and keeps landing blow after blow with such power that he splits the enemy's sword in two, landing a direct hit to his nose with a flurry of punches. Park Hyun-sung lets out a loud scream, and Yoonja stomps on him without hesitation, striking him directly in the pit of the stomach, making him lose his breath and nearly vomit. Thirsting for justice, the hero begins to ask if it was fun for him to kill innocent people and says that now he knows how they felt. He presses his foot harder against the chest of the fallen man, who begs him to stop. But inside, his bones begin to crack. Yoonja presses his foot right on his collarbone, causing immense pain. Then he clenches his fist again and drives it like a rocket into Park Hyun-sung's teeth, crushing his skull with the impact. Once more, he strikes him all over the face. Broken, he keeps begging for mercy, pleading not to be killed. But Yoonja doesn't seem moved at all. Sadistic and satisfied, he laughs while Park Hyun-sung trembles for his life. When called a psychopath, Yoonja gets extremely pissed off and starts talking again about the people Park Hyun-sung killed without mercy. Grabbing him by the collar, he asks how many of them begged just like he is now. He remembers his own painful past, running through the streets in despair and hearing his wife's voice on the phone pleading for help, his desperate footsteps in the middle of the storm. Returning to the present, he keeps screaming and asking if Park had any mercy. His rage seems endless, and he doesn't stop or hold back his blows. Relentlessly, he keeps repeating that he killed them all. Emotional, he screams the names of his wife and daughter. Jeong-yu can hardly believe the horror he's witnessing, and what his partner is capable of. A sharp, agonizing scream cuts through the air. Hot tears run down Yoonja's face. He's lying on the weakened body of his enemy, who groans and begs not to be killed. Yoonja rises, exhausted, and says it's time to end this. Blood splashes from his opponent's body. Sitting with a lost gaze, he reflects on what he's done. Head bowed, he holds his diary in front of his friend. Jung Yu is completely speechless. He breaks the silence by asking what that is in his hands. Yoonja explains that it's the diary he got from his wife, Eun Kyung. His partner is touched by that. The two sit in silence inside the room. Unbothered, he continues, focused on reading his confessions on the pages, pondering the fact that he finally killed the man responsible for his greatest anguish. The revenge he couldn't achieve in his own world was now possible in this reality. It's not something he can simply be free from now. He trembles from what's happening. He forces himself to think clearly. Then he stares at the pages in his notes, repeating over and over in his mind that killing him won't bring his family back. Exhausted and distressed by everything that happened, he soaks the diary with his sweat and sorrow, realizing that his pain remains and the suffering hasn't disappeared. Jung Yu opens the door again to check on Yoonja's state. He asks if he finally stopped crying. Hearing the reply in a joking tone, the boy smiles. His partner looks at him calmly. Then he quickly explains that they got lucky because one of those henchmen was actually a target he was looking for. Yoonja keeps looking at him for a long while. His friend notes that this is just the beginning. Dawn is breaking outside, and he agrees there's still a lot to do. In the village, the bounty hunter is arguing with a guy. They're arguing because the guy tried to trick the negotiator. His recognition skills are so good that he's even bored. Suddenly, 2 bags are dropped on his table. Yoonja and Jung Yu brought their bounties. Satisfied, the young man also asks for the guild file, but he looks completely shocked when he reads the name Park Hyun-sung. He's stunned, and asks how he could possibly be dead. That makes him both very happy and surprised. With enthusiasm, he offers 2 pellets for them to swallow and finally become members of the assassin clan. The boys aren't ready to trust him, but the moment is now or never. Still, the hunter insists that it will make them stronger and that they must swallow it if they want to stay, or they can leave. Without thinking too much, they both put the pellets in their mouths and finally find the courage to swallow them. Offering the clan ring, the assassin performs a brief welcoming ritual. A sound of disgust interrupts the action. Jung Yu spits out his seed, saying it tastes disgusting. Yoonja also takes his out and says it's just a demon seed. They carefully observe the clan's crest and reflect on having to eat that thing and how chaotic things are about to get. Holding the seed in his hand, he thinks about these assassins and what the purpose of all this might be. Frustrated, he crushes the seed, and a blue light emanates from between his fingers. His partner asks what's going on. When he opens his hand, he sees the seed dissolving in some kind of enchantment. The blue sheen turns purple, then green. A strange force seems to take hold of Yoonja's wrists. The shackles are hurting him as if they were tightening around his arm. That's it. They're evolving. With distressed eyes, he simply cannot believe what's happening. His hand is out of control, and neither he nor his partner knows what to do. The dark aura is now available among his powers. The enchantment remains in place. The dark aura keeps growing, incorporating that magic. Lord Zahar's shackles were made from a piece of his own soul and enhance the power of all equipment and attacks. Yoonja is amazed to see it with his own eyes. Jung Yu asks if he's feeling okay. The shackles have finally fused with his arm, and now he no longer feels pain. His partner is totally relieved to realize they're not in trouble again. The seed is no longer black, and Yoonja concludes it must be because he absorbed its dark aura. Still very worried, his companion keeps asking if he's really okay. He wants to know if dark aura is a good thing, but the boy also has doubts and says he'll have to wait to find out. However, they regret having lost one of the pellets. Now there's only one left, and they need to use it wisely. Joking with Jung Yu, he says just keeping it away from his hands will be enough to avoid problems. The two keep making fun of the situation, while walking under the blue sky. Meanwhile, in the village of Melton, Elvin is reviewing some paperwork in his office. He and Meg talk about the leftover chimeras from Abraham's lab, and the work that still needs to be done. Drinking tea, she says her job is cleaning up the mess he made, and that should be enough for now. Her sarcastic tone makes him sigh deeply. A knock is heard on the other side of the door. Surprisingly, a member of the clan enters, and announces that Yoonja and Jung Yu have returned. Both Meg and Elvin are thrilled to hear it. The two are invited in, and sit down in the office. Catching up, he asks if things are going well. Not holding back, Meg immediately asks if they've already settled everything in Darkwood. Yoonja shifts in his seat and pulls something out of his pockets, sliding the objects across the table toward them. He explains that they actually collected something. He then reveals under his hand 2 assassin clan crests. Elvin and Meg are completely shocked by what they see. Curious, the boy asks if they planned this the whole time to join the assassin clan after rejecting them. Staring at them in disbelief, Yoonja seems disturbed by the boy's accusations. A demon seed, after all. Everyone who joins the clan must chew this powerful stone. That way, they become stronger and defeat their enemies. As a natural enhancer, it gained fame across the world. Many ate it, thinking they would become invincible. But that magic it carries is dangerous. Those who consumed it had their bodies taken over by its roots, permanently changing them from the inside. Humans transformed into true demons. Elvin looks extremely confused by all of this. Recapping what happened, Yunja goes over the revenge and the kind of reward that comes from passing the clan's trial. Regretfully, Elvin realizes he was rude and judged without knowing what they had been through. Jung, who says he doesn't need to worry, and then shows the demon seed, which looks like a marble. Elvin stares at the object intently, surprised that he's unable to identify it. Yunja continues explaining that they are forced to eat it and that it can be crushed with just a blow. His hand crushes the seed on the table, releasing the dark aura before Elvin and Meg's eyes. He reveals that the seed is a demon fetus, and eating it releases a parasite in the stomach that controls the mind of whoever ingested it. The pair is appalled by what they've just discovered. It's madness. Even dealing with such wicked people, they can't believe they were possessed all this time. Elvin thinks this is far worse than anything Abraham did, and asks how Yunja was able to find all of this out. Cautiously, he acknowledges that he's not blaming him, and that he knows his entire story, and the sacrifice made in the name of vengeance. But he doesn't understand how it's possible for him to have so much information about an item that can't even be identified. Releasing the power of his shackles amid red smoke, he asks to begin the explanation with a demonstration. Everyone watches as the magic emanates from his body. Meg and Elvin are outraged by what they're witnessing. The dark aura spreads throughout the room as they watch in fear, since that power is forbidden for humans. Elvin asks if he ate the seed. Yunja explains that he didn't eat it, but that his shackles absorbed all the seed's power, allowing him to identify it. That doesn't make much sense to Elvin, but he believes his comrade. Standing up, he decides to report all of this to the master of his clan, justifying that it's his duty, considering the seriousness of the situation. Before leaving, he states that war with the assassin clan is now inevitable. All is calm in Melton. Yunja and Jung, who are finally discussing their plan in a private room. Lying on the bed, his partner asks if they can survive a war, given they acted as spies. The answer is always the same, that he was free to choose whether to stay or not. In any case, Yunja emphasizes that he shouldn't worry too much. After all, he intends to keep his promise of not letting Jung, die. The sun shines over the imposing buildings of the central city. A woman rushes through the corridors. Meg makes a dramatic entrance into the meeting room, surprising everyone in the clan who is already seated. They stare at her impatiently. Everyone seems oddly uncomfortable due to her lateness. Without further delay, she opens the meeting by greeting the 5 representatives of the continent's most powerful clans. She explains that they must decide how they will face the assassin clan and their demons. Meg presents a vial where she stored the parasite as evidence, explaining how they've been operating. One by one, the leaders comment on the situation. The oldest one grumbles that now they have to fight demons. Another one says, then it's war. The third laments the end of the peaceful days. They finally ask Meg how she obtained this information, and she reveals that they have an informant. Either way, that matters little to one of the present leaders. She emphasizes that the situation is extremely serious, and that the seeds are spreading even as they speak. Gathered around the table, they listen attentively as Meg reinforces that this is a situation they cannot ignore. Everyone remains silent. Nodding, she thanks them for their agreement, and asks to be excused because now she will announce the war plans and strategies. Meanwhile, Elin explains to Yunjin that once the meeting ends, war will be declared, but he will be protected by the clan. The young man surprises him even more by saying he intends to fight, but Elin refuses the idea, insisting that a conflict like this is not simple, especially with Yunjin as the main target. Headstrong, Yunjin shows that he doesn't care about that. Unable to argue back, Elin just throws him a defiant look, finally agreeing to his wishes since he knows he can't stop someone so determined. However, there's a special request Yunjin wants to make instead of being rewarded with protection. Walker asks if that's really what Yunjin wants as a reward, referring to a fight with him. The protagonist says yes, and affirms that it's the best option, even if Jong, you never agreed with it. The warrior then says that in that case, it's fine. Liz can handle the boring meetings. He then suggests that for the fight to happen, they should add a condition: he will only use his right arm, and if they can hit him even once, they'll be declared champions. Confident, the protagonist tells him not to be too surprised if he wins immediately. Walker says he's looking forward to seeing that. Without hesitation, Yunjin charges in for the attack. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Lois discusses the need to eliminate the carriers of demonic seeds. Across the room, a man asks if there's any way to distinguish those carriers from other players, but the woman says no. The only option is to wipe out the entire assassin clan, starting with those in the city of Darkon. However, her plan doesn't sit well with the others in the meeting, who argue that doing so is impossible since it would require setting up a massive ambush to prevent the assassins from escaping. One of the men suggests they simply split their forces between those surrounding the area and those launching the attack, causing those who were against it to now be in favor. Les then says that as everyone should know, The operation must be kept secret until it begins in 1 week. We return to Yunjin fighting against Walker. As promised, the warrior continues to use only his right arm to defend against the protagonist's attacks. He strikes right after sending the boy flying. Observing the chaos, the man asks what's wrong with the two boys, since it's already been a week and neither of them has shown any improvement, as if they haven't been paying attention to his instructions. Turning away, he says it's time to stop because the war will happen the next day, and rest is needed. Standing up, our boy says he'd like to try one more time. Thinking it through, he says that battling the warrior has improved the way he uses his abilities, especially the magic armor skill. Walker agrees to give it one last shot and tells the boy to come at him for real. John Yu lifts his head to watch the fight, shouting. The warrior says the boy isn't showing any progress, so he better think before he moves. Our boy starts running, and this time decides to attack from the air, hoping to finally land a hit on his opponent. In his thoughts, the brown-haired boy realizes that his friend's strategy involves using the magic armor. As expected, while still airborne, Yunjin activates his skill, creating a barrier under his feet that allows him to leap again, changing position while Walker aims to strike him but hits only the armor. Surprised, the man wonders how the boy stepped in the air. Quickly understanding what's happening, he stops moving, and observes the protagonist's movements for a moment. Even so, Walker manages to defend the strike, simply shifting his body slightly to the side, then counterattacks with full force, sending our boy flying and making him lose his sword. On the ground, Yunjin concludes that his strategy still isn't good enough. The warrior lets out a chuckle and says that he's finally done it, leaving our boy and his friend stunned. Full of energy, Walker says it's now Jong Yu's turn. Sitting on the ground, the protagonist watches the man chasing after the boy who screams non-stop. Later that same day, the warrior says they really need to rest for tomorrow, then asks why Yunjin decided to join the battle, if it's because he hates the assassins. Our boy replies that it's something like that, while thinking to himself that he only agreed to join because he wants to prevent what's written in the diary to finally be able to see his family again. Walker and Jong Yu notice the boy's expression changing. Breaking the silence, the warrior asks why he chose of all places to go to Karen. The protagonist replies that it's because the city has the least influence from the assassin clan and is, therefore, the least dangerous. Intrigued, the blonde man says if he thinks that, then fine. Jong Yu asks Walker why they took so long to want to wipe out the assassin clan. The warrior says the clan is much bigger than he thinks. So, first they needed to form an alliance among the 5 clans. And since that alliance was impossible until recently due to major power struggles, the task kept getting postponed. But now, fighting demons gave them a common cause. And as long as the creatures don't interfere, they can finally take care of the assassin clan. Since war is war, Walker ends the conversation by asking the boys not to die. The next day in Karen, we see people from all 5 clans gathered, marching determinedly into the city, and among all those people are Yunjin and Jong Yu. Some time later, we see Jackal complaining about the presence of our boys because they're rookies. His master tells him to shut up, but the boy asks if that situation doesn't bother him at all. Annoyed, the brown-haired boy decides to charge at him but is stopped by the protagonist. Looking back, Jekyll says they're nothing but cowards and useless. The group leader then asks him to calm down, though he admits to himself that even if the boy is being an idiot, he also has a point. It doesn't really make sense to bring mere candidates from the Skyscraper clan into a fight, especially candidates who are rookies. Sighing, the man says he just hopes the boys are at least somewhat useful. A little farther back, Yunjin tells his friend to stay calm. They can't embarrass Walker. So the boy just needs to focus on what they came here to do. The man up front interrupts the conversation and says that the barrier ahead is a marking from the assassin clan, so everyone must walk in silence and stay alert. The group continues moving forward until the group leader starts to smell potions. Grabbing his armor, he warns that it's time to split up. He then orders Jackal and Day to go to the right while he and the other 2 head left. Smiling, the young man assigned to the right says it's great to get rid of the rookies. A bit farther ahead, the captain warns that the smell is coming from the building up ahead. The trio quickly approaches, and when they open the door, they are completely shocked by what they find. They see several people covered with cloth begging for help. And on a table is what appears to be a candle making everyone there sick. Furious, the captain shouts that the assassin clan is using drugs to enslave people. He immediately crushes the candle with his hand, concluding that was where the smell was coming from. Looking at the boys, he asks them to help get those people out of there while he goes upstairs to look for members of the clan. But suddenly, an attack occurs. Turning around, he sees that Yunjin has mercilessly attacked a woman. Shouting, the captain asks what the boy thinks he's doing and why he attacked an innocent person. But the man doesn't notice that while he's yelling, other people are closing in from behind. He's lucky the protagonist protects him with a magical barrier. Then he asks if those people still seem like hostages to him, proving he was right all along. Our boy says that in reality, none of them are women. The captain closes his eyes and takes a breath. When he looks forward again, he realizes they were all assassin clan members disguised because of the incense. A bit in shock, the captain asks what just happened while our boys prepare to fight. Mouth agape, the warrior finally realizes that the incense was hallucinogenic. Suddenly, two assassins begin approaching him, but he takes them both down easily, all while thinking that Yunjin just saved his life. Even as a rookie player, he quickly recalls when Walker asked him to trust the boys and bring them along. Smiling, he says, now the recommendation makes sense. His only question is why the incense didn't work on the protagonist, and how the assassin clan knew they were coming if the operation was secret. Looking at the boys, he warns that all clans are in danger. Suddenly, someone screams loudly, someone who seems to be outside the city. We're taken to the metropolis of Braham, where Walker also discovers that the plan was Lee. Staring at a massive pile of bodies, furious, he says the assassins really are bastards. A man appears and asks what's going on. The warrior then says that someone leaked the operation and the same thing must have happened in the other cities. Turning to Turner, Walker says that this wasn't just a simple trap, which means the traitor is one of the clan leaders. The man then asks what they should do now since that probably wasn't the only trap. With his back turned, the warrior says it's pretty obvious. They need to keep advancing. Worried, Turner says that could be very dangerous. Fuming with rage, the blonde man declares that it'll only be dangerous for the assassins who cross his path. Gripping his sword, he utterly says that in that case, he'll go to get justice for his brothers from the Zinger clan. Walker says then they can stick to the plan. We return to our boys' team captain. Even while following the order to retreat, Jong-yu complains about the man still thinking they're weak. But Yunjin says that's actually a good thing since he was looking for a way to escape. That way, they'd have a chance. Suddenly, a scream from another direction gets the boys' attention, and they immediately stop running. It's Jackal, who is apparently in trouble. One of the assassins surrounding him says the boy seems to be the only one left. Thinking, the young man wonders how they ended up in a trap and realizes they were the prey all along, concluding that if not for that, everything would have gone right. Closing his eyes, he decides to just accept his end. But someone appears, drawing everyone's attention. It's Yunjin and Jong-yu who say they're there to help. Surprised, the assassins say they thought they had caught everyone, but now they'll have to deal with two more. Seeing the two boys approaching, Jekyll wonders what they think they're doing. Without hesitation, the villains start running toward the boys, and we find out the captain was also there, hidden in an alley, thinking about how his plan might have been Lee. Since there appear to be no survivors, he says all that's left is to wait for reinforcements. Suddenly, an explosion catches his attention. Smiling, the man thinks he'll finally be rescued. We return to Jackal, still motionless against the wall, shocked as he realizes how incredibly powerful Yunjin and Jong-yu are. Meanwhile, the assassins wonder how the boy is managing to move through the air, but before they can find an answer, they get hit full force. The protagonist decides to check on the injured boy. When stared at, Jekyll asks what it is. Our boy then asks if he's the only survivor, and the boy simply replies, yes. But screams from more approaching villains draw both their attention. Turning around, Yunjin says, they keep coming, so the boy must find the other team and call for reinforcements. Jekyll then asks who will stop the fugitives in that case. But the protagonist says the assassin clan already knew they'd be attacked, which means those who wanted to escape are already gone, so the young man should obey and go call for backup unless he's too injured to complete the task. Furious, the boy wonders how the protagonist dares to look down on him when he's just a newcomer. Still, he decides to say nothing and do what was asked. Yunjin turns his focus back to the enemies. Jong-yu asks why his friend is going to fight if he was in a hurry before. The protagonist says the plan has changed since they can't just walk away and ignore the situation. They need to buy some time for Jackal before leaving. Raising his sword, our boy gets ready to battle. But suddenly, something strange happens, which forces the protagonist to activate his magic barrier around himself and his friend, just before they're nearly struck by a massive lightning bolt. Suddenly, someone approaches and says they're fast indeed. Then he asks if he broke any rules by doing that, quickly adding that he didn't since no one died. With a dark look, Jeremy says that if they want to keep breathing, they better get out of his way. Starting a fierce battle, analyzing his opponent's type of attack, Yunjin realizes the man's sword is too long and fast, concluding that even his armor skill can't fully block the blows. Without hesitation, Jeremy keeps pressing forward, but the protagonist's team captain shows up and throws the man far away. After striking, the man says he thought reinforcements had arrived, but it was just the two boys, which makes him ashamed for having hidden. Getting to his feet, the guy in the white blazer says that hit could have been very bad, but luckily, it was only his idiot lackeys who got hit. Thinking to himself, the captain notes the enemy dodged his thunder attack nimbly, and now he has no magic left. Turning to our boy, he asks how he withstood Jeremy's attacks, showing that he knows the man. One of the big names in the assassin clan, skilled and infamous for being a cannibal, a habit he practices by annihilating rookie players. which means they need to put an end to that man before everything goes wrong. After hearing this, Jeremy says he's in a hurry, since it's almost lunchtime. He attacks the trio again with his abilities, making them scramble to dodge. The team captain runs ahead, saying he'll handle the enemy. Jeremy then asks if it wouldn't make more sense for them to join forces, attacking the gray-haired guy with everything. Luckily, Yoonjun saves him using his magic armor. In his thoughts, he says that by combining his high physical endurance with the boy's barrier to reinforce attacks, they might find the enemy's weak point. So when the captain finds an opening, he attacks with all his strength, surprising his opponent with his agility. But suddenly, Jeremy lands a blow that seems fatal, which makes him very happy until he looks to the side and sees the captain holding his sword with his bare hands. In the air, we see the next to attack is Jong-yu, who without hesitation descends with his sword pointed downward. Jeremy senses something coming, but it seems to be too late, as the boy activates his giant sword skill before hitting the ground, showing he's not just anyone. The leader of the assassin clan blocks the attack with his cleaver, saying that was nothing. But unfortunately for him, Yoonjun is right behind his back, and with a single strike of his sword, he literally takes his head off. As the man collapses, Jong-yu's sword finishes the job with precision, bringing the battle to an end once and for all. Reinforcements finally arrive, and Jekyll rushes to help his badly injured captain. Holding the man, the boy says he's still incredible for having defeated Jeremy, only to find out that most of the work was actually done by the rookies. A bit suspicious, the young man asks him to tell the truth as the captain thinks to himself how unbelievable it is, and how he hasn't felt this weak since his fight against Walker. Remembering everything that happened during the battle, the captain realizes the boys are on a completely different level, and he can't even imagine how strong they'll be in a few years. He then asks Jackal where the young men went. The boy simply says the pair left, leaving the captain a little confused. Jackal explains that he looked for them because he wanted to thank them for their help, but he couldn't find them anywhere and no one saw them after the battle. Furious, the captain orders the boy to leave and go find them immediately. Worried, he wonders what he'll tell Walker and then pleads that the boys don't dare die. We discover that Yoonjun and Jong-yu are inside the Karen underground labyrinth dungeon. The protagonist says they need to uncover the assassin clan's secret, but his friend asks if they shouldn't rest first. Realizing the answer is no, he then asks how the protagonist even knew this place existed. Our boy simply says he's just that good. In his thoughts, he says that place gave birth to another tragedy, so he won't leave without finding out how to stop the worst from happening since he can't just sit around and wait for a bad ending. Suddenly, a sword nearly hits him, but it passes just under his armpit. Without hesitation, Jong-yu strikes again. Something's clearly wrong. Confused, he asks what the boy is doing but gets no answer. Yoonjun realizes his friend is not in his right mind and wonders if this could be another hallucination, but the boy attacks him again, forcing him to defend himself with his sword. After thinking for a few seconds, the protagonist concludes that this must be related to the mist and decides to take action. Even though he didn't want to do it, he slaps his friend across the face with all his strength, which sends him crashing to the ground like a sack of potatoes. But to his surprise, the slap didn't work. Seeing the boy getting back up, he wonders what he should do. Suddenly, Jong-yu yells that he can help, right before launching another attack. We flash back to when the dude was training in the forest, and Walker tells the brown-haired boy to give up if it's too hard. Especially since this was all Yoonja's idea. Getting up, Jong-yu says it's okay and that he wants to continue. The warrior then asks why. The boy says he's tired, but he can't fall behind. Walker tells him to remember that Yoonja is a special case. The boy says he knows, but if he falls behind, he'll only be a burden, so they should try again. Back to the present, our hero realizes things are really bad and he needs to find a way to snap his friend out of the trance. Suddenly, he remembers the dark aura. Dropping his sword, he starts running toward Jong-yu. After knocking him down, he thinks that if it really is dark aura, his skill should be able to absorb it. He just has to pray he's right. The protagonist places his wrist against the boy's neck and begins the process. Soon, he realizes it's working. Then, Jong-yu's eyes return to normal, and the boy wakes up from the trance. Yoonja flicks his friend's forehead just to be sure. Holding his head, the boy asks what happened and why his face is so swollen. Turning away, the protagonist says it wasn't easy to restrain him, so he had to use force, especially because he kept attacking while mumbling weird things. Lowering his head, Jong-yu says that if it happens again, Yoonja shouldn't go to such lengths and should just kill him. Because of that stupid idea, he gets flicked again. Annoyed, Yoonja tells him to stop being an idiot, but the boy asks if that wouldn't be better than holding him back. Our hero says no, because as far as he knows, they're partners, and trusting each other is what partners do. So, the young man should relax because he'll always be there to save him. After all, having someone to rely on in that strange world is a big help. Wrapping up the pep talk, the protagonist tells the boy to never again think of himself as a burden, then reminds him that he was mumbling about asking for help. In a very sweet tone, he says he sees Jung-yu as if he were family, which makes the boy sit down but our hero says he'll wait until he recovers. Some time passes after this beautiful conversation, and we're taken elsewhere, where two assassins are talking about everything that happened. One of the men comments that the attack on Abraham kind of worked, but Walker showed up and ruined everything. Sitting on a pile of bodies, a guy asks how long the seeds need. Next to him, a young man replies, 3 months, and that Yunja and Jung-yu are the ones responsible for everything. Suddenly, the mysterious man activates his power, turning everything around them red. Panicking, the young man says he can't breathe. The man then says the boy should have made sure the two swallowed the seeds. That way, none of this would have gone wrong. Still struggling to breathe, the young man begs for forgiveness. Apparently, the apology works. Thinking to himself, the boy realizes the man grew stronger after absorbing the massacre's energy. Standing up, the man announces that they're heading to Frieren because there's something he needs to check. 2 weeks pass and we see Jung-yu relieved that the monsters in that dungeon aren't very strong. Joking, the protagonist says the creatures are stronger than his friend was while in a trance. Some time later, the brown-haired boy asks if they're on the right path. Our hero says yes. The two arrive in front of a bunch of colorful doors, and Yunja says it's time to go through the red one. Going ahead, the other boy says it's amazing how the protagonist always knows what to do. But when he opens the door and sees what's inside, he immediately takes a step back and locks it again, then asks the protagonist to take a look. We discover along with the boys that on the other side of the door is a massive beast. Whispering, our hero says that's definitely one big boy, and that it's better to avoid that fight for now. They just need to reach the black door behind the monster, which seems to be the last one. Looking at Jung-yu, he says the plan is to pass slowly and quietly. The two boys begin their crossing, but they accidentally kick a stone, which starts rolling toward the monster. They both stop for a moment. Luckily, the creature only shifts slightly, still deep in its sleep. Quickly, Yunja and Jung-yu make it to the black door, passing through without a second thought. Taking a deep breath, the brown-haired boy says he saw his life flash before his eyes. And when he looks ahead, he's completely mesmerized by the sight of a gigantic tree. Approaching it, he asks if that might be the tree of life or something like that. But Yunja says there's nothing sacred about it. And after placing the palm of his hand against the trunk, he declares that it's a demonic tree that produces demon seeds. His friend just has to look at the little black thing stuck to the wood. Jung-yu then says that's what the assassin clan was distributing, which means everything there is a demon seed. Yunja says that's why they came, to destroy it all before something worse happens. The brown-haired boy asks how they're going to do that since it's just the two of them. Our hero then says he has a plan that might work if he's right. Placing his hand on the trunk again, the protagonist starts the process. After a few minutes of silence, a strong light appears along with a purple mist. Thinking to himself, Yunja says it's working. He came up with the plan when he noticed his shackle absorbing the seed's aura, which means his demonic aura attribute might increase. But suddenly, something starts to go wrong, and strange veins begin to appear on his hand. A few minutes later, Yunja falls backward. Next to him, Jung-yu asks if he's okay. The protagonist says yes, but that he needs to rest. Looking at the tree, the brown-haired boy says he was wondering what his friend was doing. Our hero then asks if he wants to try taking down the tree. Jung-yu replies by asking if he could even handle it alone. Yunja says yes, but that he's exhausted, even if the health reduction is only temporary. Grabbing his sword, the boy in white clothes says that in that case, he'll give it a try. Looking up at the top of the tree, he activates the skill that makes his sword gigantic and charges forward, striking the first blow, making the tree begin to tremble. Meanwhile, in the central metropolis in the assembly hall, Meg says they nearly suffered a serious loss, but Walker and Turner managed to handle the situation well, despite Shipman still resisting in Darkwood. A man asks if it wouldn't be better to send Walker to the city, but Turner says it's not the best idea since the man might not be able to handle it even with his great skill in battle. Suddenly, someone bursts into the room shouting to report that Shipman has escaped from Darkwood. The clan leaders comment that now is the time to strike, but they need to figure out where someone like him would go. The informant adds that besides that, some hostages from the assassin clan started vomiting out of nowhere. A man asks why that would be relevant. The warrior then says it's because the hostages began vomiting demon seeds, leaving everyone in complete shock. We return to the moment Jung-yu struck the tree with his sword. Impressively, the trunk split like butter, causing a loud crash as it hit the ground. Excited, the boy says he did it, and Yunja says he did a great job. The boy then says his sword did all the work, even if it took an entire day. Suddenly, the handle of the boy's weapon drops to the ground. Shaking, he asks what he's supposed to do now. Out of nowhere, Yunja says the sword broke just in time and dives into the hole where the tree used to be. Shouting, Jung-yu asks what's going on. The protagonist tells him to stop yelling and jump down, too. When he gets down there, the boy is shocked by what he sees. It's the assassin clan's treasure. Looking over the items, our hero thinks he never would have guessed there was anything there if not for the journal. He then hands Jung Yu a new sword. Inspecting the weapon, the boy says the fact that the sword grows by absorbing blood is a little disturbing. The protagonist says he'll have to get used to it since it probably works with monster blood too, and that he'll keep the paradoxed sword, which isn't too bad and uses demonic aura. Suddenly, a blue vial catches Yoonja's attention. He remembers his conversation with Walker about how he received an elixir when he finished the tutorial. The protagonist asks if the vials are really that rare, and the man said an undiluted elixir could resurrect the dead. Back to the present moment, we discover that this is exactly the elixir the duo just found. Jung Yu says they now have everything they needed, but our hero says it's a shame there aren't any rings. Then the two decide it's time to head back. Going ahead, the brown-haired boy says he'll check if the bear is still asleep, but when he opens the door, he's face to face with a huge red eye. Turning around, he asks Yoonja if his health debuff is gone. The boy says not entirely, but it's probably a good time to test their new equipment. Sometime later, we see the boys fighting the beast. Jung Yu says it's harder than he thought it would be. The protagonist agrees and says that's no ordinary monster, as it releases a ton of demonic aura with every attack. Suddenly the bear strikes at the duo, causing them to fall backward. Yoonja says they have no choice now but to fight. Activating the flames of his sword, he uses his armor to gain momentum and lands the first blow, making the creature roar furiously. Jung Yu understands that now it's his turn, and also attacks the giant bear. The two then realize the opponent is slow, and doesn't recover quickly, so all they need to do is keep hitting it constantly to win. Looking to the side, Yoonja wonders what all the demonic aura in his body is going to be used for now. Suddenly, the monster grabs his attention. Opening its mouth, the creature unleashes a massive explosion of light, aimed directly at the boys. They're only saved because the protagonist activates his armor and pulls Jung Yu back. The brown-haired boy is startled, but our hero can only think about how that bear has so much power. Without hesitation, the creature attacks again, making our hero pray that his armor will hold. Outside, we see the ground begin to crack, giving way to a massive crater. Coughing, Jung Yu says that if it weren't for the protagonist's magic armor, they'd be dead by now. He then adds that at least the monster's strike helped them reach the surface faster. Worried, he asks if the bear is going to follow them, but Yoonja says no. Suddenly, someone appears and asks what the mess is all about, and what the boys were doing underground. Getting no answer, he says the pair look familiar, and asks if they're part of his clan, then orders them to answer immediately. With an angry expression, Yoonja wonders what Shipman is doing there. Impatient, the man repeats his question, who are they and what were they doing underground? Our boys don't reply, just stare at him in silence, which makes him even angrier. After exchanging glances for a few seconds, Yoonja says they're there in Dunner's place, as they were tasked with watching the dungeon while he's away. Shipman then asks if it's true that Dunner was killed. Thinking quickly, the protagonist realizes they need to find a way to leave before the man discovers it's a lie. The man asks again what caused the mess, and the boy says it was the flesh-eating bear. Shipman questions whether the tree is unharmed, and our hero says yes, that it's down there safe and sound. After a moment of thought, the man says he'll be the one to confirm that after inspecting it himself, then begins walking toward the hole. When he reaches the edge, he stops. Yoonja takes the chance to warn Jung Yu that as soon as the man enters, they need to leave. But Shipman says he now remembers why they look familiar, explaining that he saw both of them on wanted posters, since they were responsible for a comrade's death and are therefore traitors to the assassin clan. Turning around, he asks if the protagonist's name is Yoonja. We return to the city of Darkwood where Turner dealt with the villain clan members. After receiving their thanks, the man says he has to go. A player says Turner is always so polite, and her friend agrees, saying that's rare among the elite, and that the man truly lives up to his nickname, the Gentleman. Turner quickly arrives at the cabin of Shipman's aide and asks if he's preparing to leave the city. The young man says yes, since the fall of the demon tree marked the defeat of their clan. The man asks where Shipman is. The youth replies that he went to Karen to check on the tree's condition, even though it's likely too late. Lowering his head, he asks if it was all the man's doing, since they knew others would find out about the seed soon anyway, even if it happened quicker than expected. And since only the assassin clan knew about the underground labyrinth, that means Turner is the traitor. Without confirming anything, the man says Taihan is bold to speak that way to him. Angrily, the youth says that either way, now they need to hide, and let the demons or the clan master handle things. Turner asks if he's sure, and Taihan confirms, saying the woman was the one who chose to ally with the creatures. The man then says he needs to discuss that with Shipman once he returns. The boy says the man won't take long, only high-level players can stop him. We return to our boys who are now in trouble. Shipman asks how they found that place. Nervously, Yoonja wonders if fighting is their only way out. Confirming it is, the man says he has ways to make them talk, then activates his red mist ability, which quickly envelops the boys. The protagonist looks to the side and asks if Jung-Yu is okay. He says he can hold on for a while. Suddenly, something flies toward the protagonist, who jumps back to defend himself. But the brown-haired boy isn't as lucky and takes a direct hit. Shipman then says Yunja is stronger than most for resisting his mist, unlike Jung-Yu, who seems weaker. Getting closer, the man asks the protagonist what he did to the demon tree. Our hero says they cut it down to destroy the assassin's nest. Shipman bursts into laughter and says that as one of the assassins, he's not happy to lose his nest, then immediately attacks Yunja with full force. He barely manages to dodge, but when he looks up, he sees a rain of sharp spears coming straight at him. Thanks to the ability of his ring, our hero manages to escape unscathed. However, when he tries to use his magic armor ability, he realizes it doesn't work against that type of attack. Shipman takes advantage of Yunja's distraction and charges at him. But the protagonist turns around at the last second and manages to block the strike with his sword. Even so, the man throws him backward, then asks why there's a demonic aura radiating from the boy since he knows it's not coming from the seeds, which haven't even hatched yet. Getting to his feet, the protagonist tells him to figure it out on his own while thinking about how strong his opponent is. With a dark expression, Shipman says he'll make sure the boy's death is as painful as possible. From above, we can see the red mist has spread over a large part of the forest, while the protagonist keeps dodging his opponent's strikes with great effort. Using his sword, he manages to block the red projectiles, but Shipman continues attacking relentlessly. Pausing for a moment, he says the boy must have reached his limit, so he'll ask again, how did you find out about the seeds and the labyrinth? Thinking to himself, Yunja concludes that the effects of his ring are useless against this man and that the man's mist ability amplifies the power of his strikes. But if all of his attacks are based on blood, snapping out of his thoughts, he says he has a question too because he wants to know why a human like him sided with demons. Shipman replies, that's a stupid question. Since it doesn't matter whether someone's human or demon, I simply chose the side that lets me kill more people. Yunja then says he was right, it really was a stupid question, especially since he already knew how idiots like this man think. Sighing, the villain says this kind of talk won't get them anywhere, so it's time to die. We see a massive spear flying straight at the protagonist's face, but something stops it from hitting him. Jung-Yu grits his teeth as he finally manages to get back on his feet. Smiling, our hero says he took long enough. Surprised, Shipman asks how the boy is still able to move and how he blocked the attack. He quickly realizes it's because of the sword called Blood of Lamar. The brown-haired boy says it was thanks to him that he figured out how the sword works. The man asks how he got the weapon, and Jung-Yu replies that he took it from the assassin's stash. Thinking to himself, the enemy says he thought the sword had been made for him, but there's a limit to how much blood the blade can absorb, making it useless for his ability. Smiling, Jung-Yu says that if the sword can absorb the man's attacks, then maybe they have a chance, especially because they still have each other. Shipman then asks if he really thinks he knows how to use that sword, adding that it changes nothing. Suddenly the boys are struck again by the sharp red projectiles, and once more, the brown-haired boy takes the worst of it, while Yunja defends himself without trouble. A massive red explosion follows. We are taken elsewhere, where Jekyll and his captain are still searching for the boys but find no trace. Suddenly, something catches their attention. They quickly turn and notice a red stain in the forest. Shouting, the captain orders the boy to run and warn the clan. Holding his sword, Shipman observes the boys who are now inside a shallow crater. Jung-Yu is on his knees, but a few seconds later, he collapses to the ground. Yunja tells him to get up, but when he looks at the boy, he realizes the worst might have happened. Screaming, he begs his friend to get up. Shipman tells him to stop. Jung-Yu is likely dead since the stronger the sword becomes, the more it consumes the life of the one who wields it, which means they are nothing more than weak and ignorant, only capable of delaying his plan a little, and so they will die here. The protagonist starts to recall the past, returning to a moment when someone was crying out for help, while a man said that women and children are easy prey and can be found everywhere, including his own wife and daughter. Suddenly, Jung-Yu appears crying and saying he can't afford to die because his younger siblings depend on him. Beside him, Yunja was watching everything in silence until he broke it, saying he wouldn't let him die, just like he had promised. But now, Jung-Yu is right there, dead in front of him. The protagonist decides it's time to come out of his memories. Standing up, he begins to activate his ability, causing a red mist to envelop his body. Watching the scene, Shipman says the boy's demonic aura is merging with his magic, resulting in a massive amplification. We find out that thanks to Zehar's shackle, Yunja's magical and demonic aura have become one. In his thoughts, Shipman notes that the boy's magic has tripled and wonders what could be causing it, not realizing the protagonist is no longer standing in front of him. The man turns at the last moment and manages to block the boy's attack. Yunja chooses not to retreat and strikes with his sword another dozen times, causing flashes of blue light to appear. With great agility, he keeps moving around his opponent. Shipman, in turn, desperately tries to follow the boy's movements. Suddenly, we see someone's blood flying. Turning around, the villain says that was unexpected because not only did the protagonist manage to land a hit, he also dodged his deadly counterattack. Surprised, our hero wonders how his sword didn't strike the man directly, but he's hit immediately afterward. Mocking him, the big guy says the magical burst did surprise him, but it'll take more than that to break his resilience. Mouth open, Yunja wonders how the man can be so much stronger than him, while the man continues talking about how he didn't foresee that move. Raising his hand, Shipman says that even so, death is inevitable and asks what the boy's last words are. Clutching his abdomen, our hero tells him to go to hell. With a dark stare, the villain replies that in that case, so be it. Suddenly, we see a gauntleted hand tearing through the red mist with force, leaving the pair a bit stunned. Joining the fight, the captain says he's found exactly who he was looking for. Unbothered, Shipman says the man is just another idiot loser he'll have to kill. Another person suddenly appears and says he talks too much. After all, if you look at the situation from above, it's clear that it's the assassin clan that lost. Walker finishes his statement by asking whether the man agrees with that assessment. The mist man says the warrior's name, catching him by surprise. Drawing his sword, Elvin says it's truly an honor to be so well known, then attacks mercilessly. After his first strike, he says it's time to get the kids out of the room and show how it's really done. Huang steps in and asks how he can help, and Walker asks him to take care of the boys. Shipman says the numbers here aren't adding up. Mocking him, the warrior asks if he's getting scared. Smiling, the villain says he can't wait to see if the man will still be so arrogant when the fight is over. Meanwhile, the captain asks if Yunja is okay. The protagonist asks how he found them. The man replies that the battle was visible from far away and that he called for reinforcements when he saw the mist. Injured, our hero thanks him for the help, then asks Kuang to take Yu first. Walker watches the situation from a distance, then turns and says it's time to end this. With a wicked smile, Shipman says he was already tired of holding back. Without hesitation, the warrior activates his ability, causing something to begin forming on his back. We discover they are large, glowing wings. The villain also begins his transformation and becomes a terrifying red demon. As their powers activate, the ground starts to crack with rocks flying everywhere. After a few intense moments of eye contact, Walker and Shipman charge into battle, beginning an epic fight. A massive explosion occurs, visible for miles. We are taken to the Sky Ripper clan's quarters where someone comments that new players must be arriving, then asks what could have happened this time. Drinking her tea, Meg says the number of newcomers keeps rising. Shocked, the young woman hears Walker say it's as if they're sending everyone there. Standing up to hand her a napkin, the man says he knows that idea crossed her mind. The mage apologizes and says she was just surprised because people had to go through quite a process to get there. Agreeing, the warrior says that's exactly why they need to end this as soon as possible. Standing up, he notes that if new players are arriving, it means the two boys have been with them for a year. Meg confirms that's true and adds that they haven't seen the two for 9 months. Walker then says she talks as if they'll never return. The mage replies that's a real possibility. After all, the boys went to the demon forest. Even though the last thing she wants is for someone to get hurt or die, the warrior says that's not possible, neither in the world they're in nor in the real world. Meg says she knows that, she just doesn't want what happened after the fight with Shipman to happen again. Return to the fateful day when men carrying Walker, Yunja, and Yu rushed into the castle in a panic, saying that all three were seriously injured. Nervously, Meg asks Kuan what happened. The man then says they fought Shipman and Karan, revealing that the villain was defeated, but the Sky Ripper clan didn't come out of it unharmed either. A few days later, the mage slaps Walker. He yells that it's patient abuse. Giving him several more light slaps, Meg says that if he knows what pain feels like, why would he risk his life like that? The two stare at each other for a few minutes. Sadly, the mage says she thought she was going to lose him, considering the state he was in. Suddenly, someone asks what they're doing. It's Yu and Yunja. Smiling, the brown-haired boy asks if this is a couple's argument. The warrior tells the boy not to make him regret saving him. Our hero joins in and asks how he's doing. Even though he's all bandaged up, Walker says it's nothing. Shouting. Meg says the man was unconscious for 2 days and still isn't fully recovered. Unbothered, the warrior asks how the boys are feeling after facing death. Smiling, they both say they're fine. The mage says she's glad they're both doing better. Catching them off guard, Yunja lets out a loud thank you and then apologizes, saying he knows he put a lot of people in danger by acting the way he did. Yu says he doesn't need to apologize, and that it's all okay. Walker agrees and says the boy just needs to remember that everything turned out fine in the end, and that he should learn to trust others more in the future. Turning to them, the man asks what happened to Shipman. Meg reveals that the man is locked up in magical chains that prevent him from escaping on his own. She then states that before killing him, they need to make him talk. Smiling, the warrior says that since the situation with the tree is also resolved, the boy should take the chance to rest. With a look that suggests he's about to drop a bomb, Yunja says he has something to confess, revealing that he and his friend are going to the demon forest where they'll stay for a while since it's probably the best place to train. With a disagreeing expression, Walker asks why, after everything they did to heal them, they're now running straight back to danger and whether they even know what kind of place the demon forest is. The protagonist says yes, then explains that it's a labyrinth full of illusions, haunted by monsters immune to physical attacks. Shocked, the warrior asks why, even knowing all that, they still want to go. Yunja then says that if they survive the forest, they'll become much stronger, finally able to help in difficult situations. Walker asks Meg her opinion, and she says she'd rather not say anything. The warrior says the boy is right, but that they need to be sure they can actually survive in that place. Determined, our hero says he guarantees they'll come back alive because they need to see how it all ends. Hearing that makes the blonde man burst out laughing. Throwing his head back, he says at least the two of them have guts. Surprised, the mage asks if he's really going to allow it. Without answering, Walker asks how they plan to get out of the forest. Yunja says he heard the clan has an item for that. The warrior then says they're only here for the item, and in that case, he'll give them what they need along with keeping the trip a secret. Smiling, the two boys thank him. But the man says there's one condition. He warns them that they'd better come back alive, or they'll die by his hand instead. Yunja and Jung, you say they will, ending the conversation. We return to the present moment where Meg says they should have prepared the boys better since it's already been 9 months without any news. Walker then tells her not to worry, as the boys are safer in the forest than they are here in the clan. The warrior agrees, saying the situation here really is quite complicated. Worried, he says that's exactly why he hopes the pair stays away for a while longer. Meanwhile, in the demon forest, we see Yunja running with his sword, then attacking several creatures, which are torn to pieces. Satisfied, our hero sheaths his weapon. Suddenly, a hooded monster with a scythe appears behind him but is stopped before it can finish its attack by Jung, who is hiding behind a tree. Smiling, the boy asks where they're heading now. Thinking to himself, the protagonist notes that 9 months have passed, and pulling out the registration compass, he says, it's time to go home, making his friend very happy. We are taken to the Middlelands where a group of people walks cautiously, afraid of what might lie ahead. One of them asks if they shouldn't check the area more thoroughly since he has a bad feeling about it. Holding a map, a man with a mustache says there seems to be a danger zone up ahead, and that given the current state of the assassin clan, it's up to them to prepare for the demon's attack, especially because if they return empty-handed, the clan master might have a heart attack. After walking a bit more, the leader tells everyone to stop because it seems like something is moving in the trees. Drawing their swords, the other members ask if it might be a bear. Everyone gets into a circle formation. Suddenly, the man with the mustache yells and points in a direction, and all we hear next are screams of desperation. We return to the central city at the clan master's headquarters, where a long-haired man asks if Walker has heard the news. Behind him, the warrior says yes. Arhan then says they lost an entire group of professionals during an expedition. But even so, they can't afford not to send anyone else to the area. That's why he'd like Walker to go along with the new candidates. Surprised, the warrior asks if the master is being serious. He confirms and asks if there's a problem with his request. Walker then asks why he wants to send the new players there even after everything that happened. Drinking a beer, Arhan says it's because he's certain their team won't fail. Hearing that makes Walker furious, as it feels like the man doesn't care about how dangerous the place really is. He then asks why the clan master doesn't just send him alone. Arhan simply replies that's not what he wants. With no other choice, the warrior says in that case, he'll have to decline the request because the boys aren't even official members yet. Annoyed, the long-haired man says that in that case, he'll speak to them personally, asking Walker to bring the pair to his office when possible so they can resume the conversation. Even while disagreeing, the warrior simply nods, but in his thoughts, he says he won't do anything. He leaves the room once again, leaving Arhan alone. The man then drinks all the liquid in his mug in one go and falls deep into thought. We return to the city where Yunja and Jung, who walk happily, glad to be back. Smiling, the brown-haired boy says he can't wait to take a hot bath and eat some good food. The protagonist tells him to enjoy it because in a few days they'll be leaving again for the Middlelands, the place Walker mentioned back in Melton, saying it was much more dangerous than the demon forest. Jung, who appears confident, because of everything they've been through over the past few months. Soon after, the two arrive at the Sky Ripper clan's building, but when they try to enter, the guards block their way. Quickly, our boys pull out their IDs to show they belong there. Surprised, one of the guards asks if those are really candidate badges. His partner says the boys were chosen by Walker after defeating an enemy. Hearing the conversation, Jung politely asks if they can enter. Stepping aside, the guards say yes. Yunja comments that apparently they've become famous. Suddenly, they see Meg walking ahead and start calling out to her. The woman turns around, and the boys ask how she's doing, but the mage only widens her eyes in shock and quickly pulls them aside. While they're running, the boys ask what's going on. The woman says she's glad to see them safe, but for now, they need to hide from the clan master. Our boys are completely confused. Suddenly, just a bit ahead, the trio runs into Walker, who tries everything he can to signal that it's not the time to show up. But Arhun appears behind the warrior and says it's a pleasure to meet the new candidates. Welcoming them, he introduces himself as the master of the Sky Ripper clan. So, the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell and see you next time.